From the tribe of the trolls to the empire of the elves, this video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1, The Troll Tribe and the Confused Traveler. Fight. Kill. In an unknown place on the continent, in an unknown huge forest, in an inconspicuous corner, a small open space was developed. Countless trolls formed a circle and issued waves of fanatical and bloodthirsty shouts. In the center of the circle, there was a life and death duel between two strong trolls. However, at this time, the two sides were already lying, and the younger one smashed the old chief's head at the cost of an arm and survived to the end. His dark blue skin was covered with knotted muscles, and on his upward curved and pointed fangs, there were rings symbolizing bravery. Each ring represented the life of a warrior from the enemy tribe. A cursory glance showed that he was undoubtedly the bravest one except for the old chief who was already lying dead. Brave, Giant Fang. I'm the chief. Big Fang. Giant Fang. The primitive and barbaric troll tribe, whose language was not even coherent, simply confirmed the new chief candidate in this way. The dead one left behind his fangs, which represented his past merits, as a token of ancestor worship. The corpse was simply buried hastily. The cheers continued, but the enthusiasm of the people was no longer around the new chief. The bloodthirsty hearts that had been ignited quickly turned into the desire to reproduce when there were no enemy heads to be taken. They began to have wild sex without any shame. The old trolls in the front row grinned at the scene, expressing their relief that the tribe had a promising future. Chief, my mother gave birth. It should be your son. A troll rushed over in the chaos. He shouted to the new chief who had just regrown his arm and was about to change the battlefield and contribute to the population growth of the tribe. The Tusk looked at the expectant female troll and hesitated for only a moment. The desire to reproduce overcame the offspring that had already borne fruit. He waved his hand and signaled the newborn to get out of the way. To be honest, compared with the happiness at the moment, the newborn, who was not sure whether it was his own child or not, was not attractive at all. The person who was waved back didn't care and had no intention of going back to report. At this moment, he spotted a middle-aged female troll with a seductive figure, 2 heads taller than him and obviously stronger. He took as much air as possible to make himself look stronger before walking away. Female troll. Sharp Fang, am strong. The female troll heard the voice and seemed to feel provoked. About 3 minutes later, the female troll got up, cursed with disdain, such as weak chicken and that's all you can do, and turned away. Sharp Fang, on the other hand, lay on the ground with a grin, as if he was recalling something. Ignore these messy things for now, and turn your attention back to a special group of buildings in the inner circle of the tribe. The roughly constructed tribal buildings were scattered in the forest, but there was a relatively refined one built in a centralized manner, surrounded by simple walls to isolate it from other places. Teams of troll warriors, in the carnival sounds coming from afar, although they cursed with envy, still controlled their lower bodies and patrolled diligently. This place was not the residence of the rich and powerful. There were only 3 types of trolls in it: the witch doctor responsible for the inheritance of knowledge, the pregnant female troll, and the female troll with young children. Without a doubt, this was the most important place in the tribe. Even the chief's residence could not compare. In one of these houses, a newly born troll baby was being held by the witch doctor in charge of the delivery and was being cleaned of the blood stains on his body. Pointed ears, pointed nose, and wrinkled skin that was also dark blue, except for the fangs that had not yet grown. Just looking at his appearance, he was undoubtedly a newborn troll. After wiping the little troll's body, the witch doctor turned it upside down and looked around, and finally stretched out his finger to flick the little needle and concluded, well, he doesn't cry, but he is strong. After that, he handed the little troll to the slightly tired female troll on the couch and said, go drink milk, grow up quickly, and become a new witch doctor. The female troll took the child and put it close to her breast without any hesitation, muttering, warrior, brave warrior. The witch doctor laughed when he heard it, stroked his tough beard, and turned to leave the house. Whether it's a warrior or a witch doctor, As long as there is a new life born in the tribe, it means hope, and he will be very happy. Of course, if it's a witch doctor, he will be happier, because there are already enough silly warriors. The little troll, being held by his mother, to drink milk is undoubtedly a little strange and different. The spirit contained in the smart eyes is not just the purity that is usually unique to this age. A little bit of ignorance, although not very obvious, is undoubtedly there, but it is unknown. Fuck. The brain of a newborn baby cannot support too complicated thinking. After a fuck that penetrated deeply into the bone marrow, the instinct overwhelmed the unknown throbbing, and soon, like an ordinary little troll, it was fascinated by the sweetness of breast milk. Spring went and autumn came, and the little troll grew up quickly. The thinking was sometimes awake and sometimes absent, and it became clearer and clearer with the passage of time. Finally, one day, it made a throbbing sound of its first cry, and finally woke up completely. Fuck. 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 Looking at its blue skin, the unfamiliar environment around it, and the faces that were completely worthy of the word monster according to the aesthetics of its previous life, the little thing said the fuck accumulated in 2 lifetimes. However, after all, it was once a complete adult. Although he was not a particularly outstanding elite, his complete education and years of bookworm experience made him quickly understand the situation he was facing. Traveling through time, although it is a bit vulgar, it is just like that. Living another life is not a bad thing anyway. The time traveler seemed particularly open-minded. In his previous life, he was very ordinary, with average grades from elementary school to university. After graduating from college, he was sent abroad to study because his family had some spare money. While studying abroad for graduate school, he was too playful and barely graduated. Later, because he didn't want to become a social animal so soon, he used the money he earned from working during his master's degree to continue his doctoral studies. During his doctoral studies, the pressure brought by his studies and age made him a little anxious. After thinking it over, he decided to quickly make up for the accumulation he owed. Day after day of staying up late, drinking coffee, waking up cigarettes, and overdrawing his body due to his playfulness in college finally backfired the moment he completed his doctoral thesis. So he died suddenly, clearly remembering the heartache at that moment, and the darkness that followed and submerged everything. The little troll woke up from the memory in an instant, wiped the sweat on his forehead with his little hand, and looked around, feeling deeply fortunate. It's good to only experience a muddled life just once, and I must accomplish something this time. Chapter 2. Simple understanding of the world. As time went by, the little troll grew up. The bond between the trolls and their families seemed to be not very strong. Although he was not sure how long it had been since he could remember, it was undoubtedly a long time. The little troll had never seen his so-called father once, and his mother, who had been very caring at the beginning, gradually became impatient and disappeared from his life not long after he was weaned. After the initial confusion, the little troll soon found that everyone was like this. So, after sighing, "Is this okay?" he immediately accepted this setting with pleasure. After all, he didn't really want to be someone else's son again, and it was enough for him to have the parents he had in his previous life. Of course, he had to remember the kindness of his biological mother in this life. After all, she suppressed her nature and raised him until he was naturally weaned, and he had to remember to be grateful in the future. As for his biological father, he should just treat him as a stranger. No, a strange troll. After all, he didn't know him. Let's return to the troll society. The troll's care for children is not to leave them to fate after weaning. No matter how tough the little trolls are, they can't stand this. The children here are raised by the tribe after weaning. As for food alone, when the warriors of the tribe return from hunting, they will specially divide a part of the harvest, and the witch doctors will distribute it to children of different ages until they grow up to the height of the chest of mature troll. During this period, the witch doctors will be responsible for teaching the children knowledge. The content of the teaching is not very complicated. From language to common sense, they teach in a rough and inefficient way. In addition, there is enough food. Sometimes, even if the harvest is not very good, in addition to ensuring the rations of the mature warriors, they will give priority to taking care of the children's well-being. Therefore, the little trolls who eat meat with big mouthfuls are extremely energetic. With almost no learning tasks, they have a lot of time every day to play, which can be called a high quality childhood. After extensive learning, the little troll understood a lot of things and found a lot of problems. First, the place where everyone lives is called the Black Forest. It is very large and the ancestors of the tribe have never left it. Of course, it is also possible that they left, but could not come back. There are many possibilities, but the Black Forest is indeed very large. Second, his tribe calls itself the Tooth Tribe, and believes that its fangs are sharper and more beautiful than those of other troll tribes. Whether it is true or not is hard to say, and it is not surprising that trolls, who generally regard fangs as one of the most important indicators of beauty, brag about it. Third, there are many troll tribes in the vast Black Forest, and there is no stable diplomacy between them. It can even be said that there is no concept of diplomacy. The tribes that are good friends today may turn against each other tomorrow. In addition, among the many tribes, the Tooth Tribe is said to be relatively powerful, and the warlike chiefs often fight between tribes to show their bravery. Of course, this is meaningless to the little trolls. They all live by gathering and hunting. They cannot plunder people to grow up, because they cannot afford to feed them, and there is no food to rob. What good is it to win a lot of rags that can only be used to decorate fangs in each fight? Of course, maybe the tribe has its own intentions to do this, but the little trolls who grew up in modern society don't understand it. Fourth, the development of the tribe is relatively primitive. This primitiveness is reflected in 1. Living in simple wooden houses and using wood, bone, and stone weapons. 2. The stone processing methods are rough, and grinding a spearhead or a small axe is a big project. 3. Gathering and hunting for a living. There is no concept of animal husbandry and planting. 4. The use of metals remains at the stage of processing natural soft metals. Great force works miracles, and its appearance is changed by kneading, and it is mainly used as ornaments. 5. There is no means to make fire, and they eat raw food. When it comes to raw food, especially raw meat, the little trolls are particularly unacceptable. It is not physiological. Facts have proved that trolls have no problem eating raw meat. It was a psychological inability to accept. The concepts he had developed in the past 30 years were particularly stubborn in this regard. He had thought of a solution, such as drilling wood to make fire. This was the only way he had heard of to make fire besides modern methods of making fire. However, he almost drilled the wood through but there was no flame at all. He had no choice but to try his best to adjust himself to the environment. 6th, the troll tribe, at least the nearby tribes, did not have a systematic writing system. When the witch doctors taught them, they generally used real objects to teach. Even if there were things like teaching materials occasionally, the reason was that the corresponding real objects were not convenient to obtain, so they could only be drawn into pictures to facilitate teaching. He had carefully observed the teaching materials of the witch doctors, and from time to time there were indeed special symbols. At first, he thought it was text, but after asking carefully, he found that it was just a simple icon made by the maker for his own convenience of memory. It was not universal, and had no communication properties. The little troll secretly noted this point, and decided to try to formulate a set of writing system when he grew up. As for why not bring it up now? There is no complicated reason. I just feel that, if I raise this question now, it is likely to be out of my control, and evolve into something completely unfamiliar and primitive, which is a bit troublesome to learn. He also hopes to be able to reproduce a set of Chinese characters. As for how to combine Chinese characters with the troll language, he has not thought about it yet. If it is really not compatible, it is not impossible to use Latin letters to make a set of phonetic characters. Anyway, let's talk about it when I grow up. 7th, the troll tribe does not have a complete concept of calendar. The judgment of the weather is very simple. The big season depends on the experience of the witch doctors, and the small time is divided according to the custom. The big season is divided into big hunting and small hunting according to the difficulty of obtaining prey. But there is no rule that can be known consistently, and it is also mixed with a concept of direction, which is not completely used to indicate the season. For example, before hunting, the witch doctors will first perform a set of inexplicable operations, such as smelling the soil, tasting the wind, and observing the texture of the leaves, etc. Then, after a period of mysterious discussion, they will come to the conclusion that a certain direction is big hunting. The warriors of the tribe will hunt according to this conclusion. The concept of day does exist. A cycle of light and darkness is a day, which is called day and night. However, the tribe is located in the dense forest and is not very sensitive to the sunrise and sunset, and there is no need to be precise. Therefore, the concept of the cycle of day and night is also quite broad, and it is better to go by feeling. As for the concept of year, quarter, month, hour, minute, second, it is blank. Basically, it is done with broad and non-uniform units such as a long time ago, a while, a little longer, from here to there. Without a calendar, there is naturally no concept of age. The growth of the little trolls is described by calf high, thigh high, lower abdomen high, chest high, shoulder high, and so on. Trolls with high calves are weaned and start to be raised together. Trolls with high thighs begin to learn combat skills or witch doctors. Trolls with high abdomens can start strong physical training. Those with high chests follow the hunting team to learn hunting. Trolls with high shoulders are barely considered formal warriors. As for the standard, it is usually the chief of the time, that is, the strongest warrior in the tribe at the same time. In addition, the pregnancy period of a female troll is equivalent to the time it takes for a newborn troll to grow to the height of his calf. In short, in this series of problems, the little troll overcame many difficulties such as eating raw food and becoming increasingly vague about the days. Relying on the natural toughness of the race, he finally grew to the height of his thigh and welcomed the tribe's examination of the qualifications of the witch doctor. It is said that the little trolls who pass the examination will have a completely different way of growth. Although the witch doctor's mumbling is a bit inexplicable, it feels that their social status is not lower than that of the chiefs, and their number is very small. In any case, the little troll decided to try hard, but the little troll who didn't understand how to test it didn't seem to have a clear direction to work hard, so he could only wait. Chapter 3: The so-called test, the so-called witch doctor. Soon, the day of the test arrived. The test method was not complicated. All 3 witch doctors in the tribe took out a bark textbook that could turn pages. After dividing into groups, they turned the pages in front of the children one by one at a speed that was not slow, but enough to see the contents on the page clearly. Afterwards, the children were asked to copy the contents of the textbook as much as possible. The textbook showed patterns that were as regular as possible. The witch doctors were also fair. The children saw these patterns for the first time and had no chance to remember them in advance. The little troll's group of children almost completed the presentation at the same time as the other 2 groups of children. But he did not start to copy what he saw at the first time like the other children, but closed his eyes in a daze. Am I such a genius? Looking back at the basically clear content in his mind, the little troll was a little surprised and doubtful. He had never experienced the taste of academic tyrant, and he became happy again. Perhaps, the superposition of the mental power of 2 lives will affect memory? Although I have never heard of the so-called spiritual power in this life, who can blame me for reading a lot of idle books in my previous life? So, the little troll casually put on a concept that he didn't know whether it was true or not, and enjoyed the taste of photographic memory with peace of mind. Of course, in terms of the final result, he is still a certain distance away from the real photographic memory. When reproducing, there were many differences in details. Despite this, it still scared the old witch doctor, and the 3 of them came over to make up a series of tests to verify the authenticity. In the end, they cheered and listed the little troll as the most talented witch doctor apprentice in history. Although strictly speaking, they have no concept of history. In addition, among this group of thigh-high little trolls, only he passed the test and became a witch doctor apprentice. The test results of other children were mediocre, and according to experience, they were not suitable to become witch doctors. Although it is not clear whether the witch doctor is really capable, the little troll is still very happy. After 2 lives, I finally became a benign special. This feels great. Thinking this way, the little troll accepted the new name according to tradition. No, from now on, he should be called Baki. So, Baki followed the witch doctors and left. From today, he will start learning to be a witch doctor. Don't say from now on, when my words are effective, I will definitely change this crappy name. Baki complained about the new name in his heart and made another idea. I can't give up physical training just because I start learning to be a witch doctor. On the one hand, it was the psychological shadow caused by the sudden death in the previous life. On the other hand, it was also because he didn't trust the witch doctor's methods. This distrust was broken in a very short time. The younger of the 3 witch doctors performed a scene that made his worldview explode later. After leaving the test site, the witch doctors led Baki to the center of the kindergarten, a not very eye-catching courtyard. After asking him to wait for a while, one of them took out an irregular crystal from the house. Baki, you need to know the power of witch doctors. After saying this, the witch doctor raised the crystal in his hand and just closed his eyes for a moment. A light blue crescent-shaped curved blade that was visible to the naked eye formed in front of his hand and was fired at a very fast speed. With a whoosh sound, he looked forward and saw a deep cut on the solid ground in front of him. Baki was stunned. Although he had been prepared for the nature of this world, he still felt incredible when this fantasy scene really appeared in front of him. See, witch doctor, it is knowledge and power. Stronger, we will see later. But stronger, the price is greater. The witch doctor who sent out the crescent was slightly out of breath when he spoke, and Baki sensitively felt the decline of his spirit. Since it was just a learning, the initial teaching ended here, and the witch doctor sent him back to pack up and start formal learning after moving in tomorrow. Baki, who did not understand what the so-called price was, left with joy, packed up his things that day, and moved into the witch doctor's courtyard overnight. Magic. I want to learn magic. For the whole night, he was immersed in fantasies about the future, such as space movement, face jumping plus time stop hard control plus 17 or 18 attack magics, which naturally made him sleepless. The new day was just a little bit listless. Baki waited at the door of the old witch doctor early in the morning, looking like he wanted to knock on the door but hesitated. Fortunately, he did not wait too long. The 3 witch doctors came out of their respective houses. After greeting each other, the oldest was responsible for teaching him, and the 2 younger ones went out hunched over. There were only 3 witch doctors in such a large tribe, and there were always endless things to do. The old witch doctor led Baki to another large house in the courtyard that was similar to a warehouse. When the door opened, wooden frames stretched in, and the old witch doctor led him to introduce them one by one. Among them, there is the kind of bark book that I have seen before. These things are not delicate in themselves. Due to the processing conditions, each page is quite thick. In addition, there is no text, and the whole text is composed of pictures. There is not much that can be recorded in each book. Therefore, these books alone occupy most of the warehouse. Bark. There is knowledge, magic beasts, magic cores, herbs, effects, traps, prey. But it will be damaged, so you have to rewrite it. Records. If you don't understand, ask the witch doctor. Baki nodded to show his understanding. If the hand-drawn things are not accompanied by text annotations, it is possible that they will be completely unrecognizable after a generation. Bark, moisture, insects, need to be checked, and if they are damaged, they need to be redone. You can't do it. Wait until I have explained it all, then you can do it. In the future, you have to explain it too. This part is also understandable. For example, for the same thing, there must be some differences between the drawings of the predecessors and the drawings of the later generations. After many repairs and renovations over the generations, the square ones can all become round. Therefore, only by understanding what the predecessors described, can we change the content to something that is easy for us to remember and understand when repairing and renovating. This series of exchanges made Baki feel a little emotional. Just talking about the current means of inheritance of the trolls, with an extremely underdeveloped language system and a variety of strange picture records, it is actually incredible that they can pass on knowledge in an orderly manner to this day. Among them, a considerable part of the credit should be attributed to the developed brain power of the witch doctors. In a short contact, Baki clearly felt the difference between witch doctors and ordinary trolls. They are more logical and their thinking is more active, but the language system limits their performance, so they speak like fools. The most obvious example is that in the previous test content, the witch doctors were able to record and accurately copy down 2 or 3 times more content than him in the same time. If nothing unexpected happens, it may not be long before the traces of civilization may first begin on these witch doctors. New book, need to collect and recommend, thank you. Chapter 4, Magic and the Price. Finally, they were almost at the part of the space where the magic core was stored. Baki waited happily for the old witch doctor's explanation. The old witch doctor seemed to sense Baki's expectation. He sighed slightly and said slowly, power, dangerous but useful, I don't want to pass it on, but I have to pass it on. Baki was puzzled. Magic was such a wonderful power, why would a troll not want to pass it on? Yesterday, price, remember? Baki nodded to indicate that he had not forgotten. He remembered that the witch doctor seemed a little tired after sending out the crescent fang yesterday. Price, more than just tiredness. As if he was coming here on purpose, the old troll took out a few books of records from the shelf in front of him, sat cross-legged on the ground, and motioned Baki to sit closer before carefully opening one of them. The first page was about a middle-aged troll with a hunched back. This is the natural standing posture of a troll, muscular and with arms longer than his knees. On the second page, a growth record from a troll baby, calf height, thigh height, lower abdomen height, chest height, to shoulder height was drawn with the simplest possible strokes. On the third page, there was a 6x12 dot matrix diagram. On the fourth page, there was an abrupt mound of dirt. Understand? Baki shook his head upon hearing this. The contents of the first and second pages were easy to understand if they were taken separately, but the third and fourth pages were completely confusing. However, if the 4 pages were read together, he had a vague idea, but he was a little confused for a while. Warrior, serious injuries, no, long life. Understand? The old troll pointed to the growth trajectory on the second page, then pointed to the dot matrix diagram on the third page and a mound on the fourth page, and said. Baki thought for a long time and finally roughly understood what this meant. In simple terms, the theoretical lifespan of a troll warrior without disease or disaster is equivalent to 12 times the time it takes for an infant to grow to adulthood. I see. Seeing that he understood, the old witch doctor turned to the 5th page, where a very obvious image of a troll witch doctor was drawn. Then came the 6th page, which was also the last page of the entire book. It recorded 6 times 14 with a dot matrix, and squeezed a mound of earth in the corner that was very similar to the 4th page. Obviously, this represented the growth and death of the witch doctor. Witch doctor's life, longer. He pointed to the 2 rows of dots that were more than the warriors and said so. Baki understood it quickly and realized that it meant that the witch doctor's lifespan was 2 times longer than the warriors and the time it took for the troll doll to grow into a warrior. Well, you are smart, faster than me. As if surprised by Baki's understanding speed, the old witch doctor praised him happily. Baki was a little embarrassed. He felt that he was not smarter than the old witch doctor in front of him. He understood faster because he had seen more things in his previous life and had a stronger ability to associate with them. He wanted to be polite, but after recalling for a long time, he couldn't find the relevant expression in the troll language at all, so he had to lick his face and agree. Qualified, few, but there are. Long life, the tribe, witch doctors should have more, but there are not more. Think about it, understand? After the old witch doctor asked, he did not wait for Baki to give an answer and answered on his own. Death. The price, turned into soil, blown away by the wind. The old witch doctor said clearly, witch doctors are indeed rare, but there will always be 1 or 2 in 2 or 3 baby booms, and witch doctors have a longer lifespan, so logically, there should not be only 3 witch doctors in the tribe now. So, what about the remaining witch doctors? From what he said, it seems that they paid the price and turned into sand and were blown away by the wind. After understanding what the old witch doctor said, Baki felt a chill, and the hot heart that had been burning since yesterday also cooled down. After seeing his reaction, the old witch doctor nodded with satisfaction, stopped scaring the child, and turned to a more systematic explanation. In short, witch doctors classify known magic cores according to the cost of using them, and this price is lifespan, or vitality. At the low level, although it is clear that it will definitely consume life, it is relatively mild compared to the vitality of the trolls, and there will be no clear feedback, and it can only be distinguished as a little tired. Very tired. At the intermediate level, the cost after use is enough to get feedback on the spot, and according to the changes in face and body shape, it can be roughly divided into 3 categories. A little older, a lot older, too much older. At the high level, the cost is already very heavy, and generally speaking, it can be divided into 3 categories: still alive for a while, dying soon, and dying immediately. Moreover, after using the high-level magic core, especially the power of the last 2 levels, if the initiator is not young enough, it is very likely that the vitality is not enough to make up for the cost, and thus die in vain. In that case, since the magic core cannot retain power, if you don't want the former to die in vain, you need to have a later person take over in a relatively short time, a few breaths, to continue to make up for the cost and launch an attack. Hearing these things, Baki felt chilled again, and kept saying in his heart, magic shouldn't be like this, but curiosity made him unable to stop asking how to use the power. Strength, feeling, magic crystal, attack, warrior, can't, witch doctor, can. The old witch doctor took out a crystal the size of an eyeball from his waist, and handed it to Baki to let him try to feel it. After taking it, Baki closed his eyes and pondered for a while, imitating the witch doctor's appearance yesterday, wanting to experience what the old witch doctor called feeling. For a long time, nothing happened. He looked at the old witch doctor with some trepidation, wondering if only his memory was enhanced, and he actually didn't have any witch doctor talent. However, the old witch doctor's obvious expression of it should be like this made him feel relieved and said, "Feeling? No." The old witch doctor nodded and replied, "Only talent, not enough. Wait until you grow up." "How long?" "I, a baby, a warrior." At this point, the old witch doctor showed 2 fingers, indicating that he had waited twice as long from a baby to a warrior. "You, good talent, short." After saying that, he first put away one of his fingers, thought about it, and felt that it was not accurate, so he restored it to 2 fingers. Only this time, he used his other hand to cover the upper part of one of his fingers, and then nodded with satisfaction, indicating that it was about this long. This. Baki was a little dumbfounded. Even though he had a vague concept of the span of time at this moment, he could understand from his own experience that the old witch doctor was gesturing for a long time. Analogously to the previous life, from the time he could remember to the so-called thigh height today, it must have been at least 3 or 4 years, right? And this is only 1/5 or even 1/6 of the time it takes for a troll to grow into a qualified warrior. To be more precise, it may be even longer. Moreover, this may have to be multiplied by 1.5. Wouldn't it take 40 to 50 years? As if he could see Baki's surprise, the old witch doctor sighed and explained helplessly, "Warriors, exercise, and become stronger. Witch doctors, who don't know how to exercise, can only wait." He paused, looked around the bookshelves and continued, "Waiting is not enough, you have to learn. Inheritance is more important than strength." After Baki nodded in response, the old witch doctor ended his broad introduction and began to teach formally. In this way, the days of learning officially began. Normally, a young troll at his stage would have been asked to do some auxiliary work that could be done in the tribe, such as helping the troll warriors who were responsible for handling food, furs, etc. But since the day Baki became a witch doctor apprentice, the tribe no longer required him to participate in these things. This is to allow witch doctor apprentices to have more time to receive inheritance, and Baki did just that, and planned to go a step further and do better. He decided to improve the tribe's recording tools first. Tree bark and the like were obviously not very reliable. Wow. How can I let more people see it? There are only 6 collections. Please recommend, collect, leave a message, and recommend. In addition, 4 new books that have not been signed. How many chapters should be released every day? Chapter 5 Clay Tablets and New Directions. When it comes to the innovation of knowledge carriers, the first thing that comes to mind is of course paper. However, after careful consideration, he found that he knew nothing, except vaguely remembering that he needed to use reeds and rags. He even had no way to get reeds and rags. In this way, Papermaking was eliminated first. Later, he thought of wood carving. However, not to mention that wood boards also have problems such as insects. The storage time is not necessarily longer than that of bark. More importantly, without qualified metal tools, obtaining wood boards will also be a big problem. The tribe's ability to process wood is limited. The current means are not so much processing as they are just used to fit the size and shape of the raw materials themselves. The third thing he thought of was bamboo slips. His origin in the previous life made him very fond of this traditional thing, and naturally he thought about replicating it. However, there was no trace of similar plants within the range that the tribe could explore, and the bamboo slip plan was aborted. Finally, he thought of the clay tablet documents in ancient Babylon or somewhere else, and realized that this seemed to be a desirable idea. This is indeed the case, and it did succeed in the end. But the setbacks encountered during this period should not be ignored. After all, he was a liberal arts student in his previous life, and he started studying law in college. How could he know anything about clay tablet making? Everything had to be guessed. In Bacchus' imagination, the process should be like this. 1. Digging soil. 2. Adding water. 3. Softening. 4. Carving content. 5. Drying. How simple it is, isn't it all about hands? However, reality immediately slapped him twice. Facts have proved that the choice of soil alone is a science. If it is not sticky enough, it will fall apart immediately after drying. If it is too sticky, it will become paste after adding a little water, and it is impossible to carve anything. And so on. As for the opportunity for success, it still appeared in the witch doctors. Earlier, when he started doing this, the witch doctors didn't say anything. Little troll, it's good to be lively, as long as it doesn't delay learning. But the repeated failures of the experiment eventually affected Bacchus' learning efficiency, and at this time, the witch doctors were already a little angry. Finally, after a serious distraction in a class, the old witch doctor in charge of the lecture silently raised his cane. Bacchus, who didn't want to get into trouble, immediately surrendered and told the witch doctor what he was thinking. The old witch doctor was very happy to hear his words. Regardless of whether the clay tablet was better, Bacchus' starting point alone was quite gratifying to the witch doctor. So, regardless of whether it would succeed in the end, the witch doctors decided to help him. At least, they couldn't discourage the little guy from trying to improve the inheritance. As soon as the old witch doctor took action, things immediately looked different. As the three most knowledgeable people in the tribe, they knew a lot of things, including the differences in soil between different areas of the Black Forest. According to Bacchus' requirements, the witch doctors roughly screened out the soil types that might meet the requirements, and after determining their respective locations, the rest of the work was entrusted to the warriors. So, after a few days and nights, Bacchus got several soil samples. While feeling that an old man in the family is like a treasure, he started a new round of experiments. After a long and hard study, a clay tablet with a short drying time, moderate viscosity, and partial modification, after dripping water appeared. Bacchus was not very clear about the clay tablet document in the previous life, but the one he made now is undoubtedly a relatively excellent carrier. In fact, it is better than he expected. For example, there is a feature that he could not have expected. That is, after the overall drying and shaping, as long as the surface is softened by water, it can be written and carved. This undoubtedly subverted his imagination of the sequence of processes, making large-scale prefabrication possible, and eliminating the troublesome scene of making one piece by one. Faced with the newly made clay tablet, the witch doctors were also very excited after a field verification. Obviously, this is a better inheritance carrier than tree bark, even if there are disadvantages in weight and other aspects, but the flaws are still not enough to cover up the merits. After confirming that the clay tablet document is feasible, the vigorous and resolute side of the old witch doctors immediately manifested. Strategies were quickly formulated, and the transportation of soil was entrusted to the warriors. You don't need too much. Every time you go to a place with this kind of soil, you can bring some back along the way. The production of clay tablets is handed over to half-grown children. Anyway, playing with mud is also a game they are passionate about. Soon after, clay tablets were delivered in batches. Baki, feeling full of accomplishment, soon realized that in the short term, this was not entirely a good thing, at least for himself, because almost all the drawing work was handed over to him. It was not that the other witch doctors wanted to be lazy, but out of practical considerations. The 3 witch doctors have passed the stage of repeated memorization. They have been awakened and can almost write down the inheritance. Moreover, while witch doctors have power, they also bear huge risks and may be sacrificed at any time. Baki, who has not awakened, will be closely protected in the tribe and be responsible for passing on knowledge in an orderly manner. Therefore, the efficiency of his learning is naturally the faster the better, and learning and carving at the same time will be an effective learning process for Baki. Naturally, this task was assigned to him. This decision undoubtedly brought a huge change to Baki's life rhythm. From the perspective of the overall workload, the renovation of the bark book was more troublesome, but at least it was spread over a long timeline and would not take up too much of his time in the short term. However, the clay tablet document was different. No matter how easy the subsequent maintenance was, when the most troublesome carving part was concentrated, it would become an annoying job. A lot of time was spent on carving every day, which made Baki quite unwilling. He had more things he wanted to do, such as magic crystals and power. Everything related to magic and the growth of witch doctors fascinated him. There were too many ideas he wanted to try, expensive prices, the nature of magic crystals, etc. However, the huge and tedious work in reality made him unable to spare too much thought and time. This situation made him very anxious. The witch doctor soon discovered his emotional changes, and they were quite tolerant, and gave Baki a 2-day holiday. Back in his house, Baki sat on the ground leaning against the wall, looking up at the roof, made of tree branches. The Black Forest's sunlight resources were not very abundant, and it became even dimmer after filtering through another layer. But this dimness, accompanied by the silence around, made the troll body feel comfortable. As a result, the anxiety of the past few days was relieved a little. I can't go on like this. Since I don't have the ability to take care of multiple aspects of work at the same time, I will first settle down and do the things in front of me. But I can't do nothing. I have to think of ways to make things simpler. After determining the direction, Baki closed his eyes and thought about what was the most annoying aspect of studying and engraving books these days. While thinking, various scenes came to his mind one after another. The inexplicable growth calendar, the missing numerical concepts, and the analogies that were difficult to understand were already bad. However, when all of this was added with picture notes, everything became 10 times and 100 times worse. I see, I know what to do now. But I'll just relax for 2 days. My internal submission was rejected today, which really affected my confidence. But I checked online and found someone else saying that already published manuscripts don't accept internal submissions. I'm feeling very nervous now, not knowing why the editor rejected my manuscript. Is it because my writing is really not good, or is it because it's already published? Chapter 6, The Creation of Words. Overhaul. Remove the bug of civilization transplantation. 2 days and nights passed quickly. As soon as Baki returned, he proposed to the witch doctors to establish a set of length standards on the grounds of facilitating the unification of the size of clay tablets, and gave his own plan. He made a long clay tablet with his own height as the standard, and stipulated that this was a meter, m. Based on this, he created millimeters, only a concept, centimeters, and decimeters, dm, according to the decimal system. Obviously, Baki copied the pronunciation, writing, and abbreviations of his previous life for his own convenience. As for the difference between the current 1 meter and the 1 meter in his previous life, he actually had no idea, even if he subjectively felt that his height was about the same as the 1 meter in his previous life. The change in the observation target made all comparisons meaningless. Who knows whether he is 1 centimeter or 100 meters? But who cares? Anyway, he felt it didn't matter. Of course, it's not enough to have units, there must be matching numbers. Under the confused eyes of the witch doctors, Baki stretched out his hand, showed 10 fingers one by one, then took them all back, and wrote a 0. Then he gestured one by one, and carved 12,345 on the clay tablet, after 5. In order to express clearly, he did not mind the trouble to put down the bone carving pen in his hand, and clearly expressed the exact number of fingers with both hands, and then picked up the bone pen to carve a 6, and then the same for 78,910. Then, he turned his hands twice to write 20, and then 3 times to write 30, and so on until 100. He stopped and looked at the witch doctors. He was a little uneasy. Although he was used to all this, and could make up the appearance of numbers, he was not able to explain the expression of 0 and the concept of add 1 every 10 to others. Fortunately, the witch doctors were all wise men, and it seemed that they did not need Baki to explain further, and they already understood the definitions of these numerical symbols and distance units, as well as the profound meanings that followed. This can be understood from the changes in their facial expressions. They went from bewilderment to excitement in just a moment. This made Baki breathe a sigh of relief. The liberal arts students who knew the facts, but not the reasons, were not capable of being taught these things. It would be great if they could understand them by themselves. At this time, the witch doctors shifted their sights from the clay tablet to Baki, as if they wanted to see clearly why this little troll was so special. They could think of these things that could be broken with a single poke, and yet were of profound significance, and had more expectations. Baki, good. Useful. More? Are there? Yes. Yard, house, size, stone slab, engraving pen, in hand, feeling, little wolf skull, big wolf skull, water, how much, fix, measure. But, no hurry, urgent, useful. The old witch doctor did not agree with Baki's opinion. How could it be useless? These things were too useful. Difficult. Length is easy to determine, those are not. Yeah, yes, I understand. Speech and symbols are more important. The witch doctors are worthy of the name of wise men. As soon as Baki finished speaking, they already understood what he wanted to express. The oldest witch doctor stroked his beard thoughtfully and said, "It's more difficult." The 3 witch doctors looked at each other, and all of them had expressions of deep agreement. Words are good things, but they are not easy. Difficult, but useful. The witch doctors also expressed their approval. The long-term habit becomes nature cannot cover up the inconvenience of the current witch doctor inheritance system. Some things only need to peel off the outermost layer of skin, and the rest of the things become natural. It's okay if the concept of words is not proposed. Once it is proposed, it will generate yearning. I'll try. After getting the approval of the witch doctors, Baki took a clay tablet and a bone container filled with water from the side, and slowly poured it on it. After a while, the clay tablet softened to the point where it could be carved. He put down the bone tool, pulled out the bone pen from his waist, and carved some symbols on the clay tablet. One part was obviously a pictograph with a roughly square structure, the other part was an imitation of the letter system. No matter how smart the witch doctors were, they could only understand that these were symbols with certain meanings at this time, and they were waiting for Baki's next explanation. Baki did not buy the suspense, pointing to one of the pictures that looked like a tree and reading the word tree. Shu is not a Chinese character, but a pictograph. The pinyin is not any pinyin from the previous life, it is just written down randomly as an analogy. Baki was mainly showing them 2 ways of determining the text, one is pictograph, and the other is to record the sound. Of course, the pronunciation is still in the troll language. After all, no matter how primitive the society is, they already have a clear concept of the names of common objects, and they are reflected in the language accordingly. It is not appropriate to make up something out of nothing. Originally, he wanted to transplant the complete modern Chinese language in one go, from the shape of characters to the pronunciation, and even the grammatical structure. After all, how convenient would that be? He could almost push the troll language forward for thousands of years in an instant. However, in the days since this idea came up, every time he fell asleep at night, there was countless subconscious voices, as if the knowledge he had forgotten in his previous life, converging into a whole to warn him, don't do this. Every time he woke up in the middle of the night, he would break out in a cold sweat and began to thoroughly reflect on his selfishness and recklessness. Is it really appropriate to transplant Chinese characters in Chinese for my own convenience? The trolls may become powerful quickly, but will they become a civilization without souls? Is this really what I want? It was only after this painful reflection that he had this superficial push now. He did not teach them Chinese characters directly. Even for pictographic characters and alphabet characters, he only gave them a general idea. He told them that they could create in this way to unify the things recorded by each other. The rest was left to the witch doctors to grasp. The witch doctors were smart, and their wisdom was indeed not to be underestimated. They quickly accepted this convenience. For a long time afterwards, they entered a state where, no matter what they saw, their first reaction was to write it down. Before night, when everyone was done, they took the characters they created and began to compare them with each other and found out which character shape everyone recognized, which became the confirmed troll language. In this way, it only took a relatively short period of time for the witch doctors to initially establish a writing system based on the original troll language. Although it was simple and the number was pitifully small compared to his previous life, it was finally on the right track. After various attempts, the excitement gradually cooled down. The three witch doctors frowned soon. The oldest one pondered for a moment and slowly said, "It's very easy for us to learn, but the warriors will not be able to learn it for a long time. This is inevitable. Even at the hieroglyphic stage, troll script is quite difficult for tribal trolls who are not witch doctors, but Baki thinks they are already very good." But the witch doctors are not satisfied. They remembered the phonetic script that Baki had used as an example. But warriors can learn it. The witch doctors decided to absorb the strengths of both families. According to the pronunciation of existing vocabulary, they created a set of crude phonetic letters, which cooperated with the ideographic troll script to form a troll writing system that can correct each other. Seeing that there are so many more things to learn, Baki silently complained, "Is it possible that I can't escape the fate of learning a foreign language, even after traveling through time?" Chapter 7. Conjectures about mental power, overhaul, still text bugs. In short, the phonetic notation method seems to have indeed reduced the difficulty of learning the new troll language. In the days that followed, Baki and the three witch doctors began to focus on several interrelated things. Learn the tribe's heritage, change the heritage content into text, and engrave it on clay tablets, according to language habits, enrich the grammar of troll language. As mentioned earlier, troll language lacks the grammar of complex sentences. They speak like spitting out words, and many words are not formed. So, taking this opportunity, the witch doctors who realized the shortcomings of their expression ability began to try to enrich their grammar system. There are results. The conversations of the witch doctors have gradually become coherent, and their expression ability has been enriched to a considerable extent. But this is not enough. This will obviously be a gradual change that will last for a long time and will not stop. During this period, Baki did not carry too much, but occasionally unconsciously put in some simple structure similar to subject, predicate, and object when speaking, which were quickly learned by the witch doctors. Years passed by like this, and when Baki grew to be almost as tall as the buttocks of a mature troll, the activities of creating characters and creating grammar began to show results. Baki also took this opportunity to escape the huge amount of labor of sorting out the inheritance alone, and shared it with all the witch doctors. The clay tablets piled up in front of him filled several warehouses, and the witch doctor's relatively complete oral ability are the marks of his achievements in this period of time. When these things came to an end, Baki could finally start the things he was interested in. For example, the research on magic crystals, and the research on witch doctors. Of course, this does not mean that he has not done related things these days, but his energy was seriously distracted before, resulting in no progress. However, during the class, his ability to distinguish various magic crystals has become more and more mature, and I believe it will be helpful in the future. In the witch hospital village, in a small room assigned to Baki, he was sitting on a simple table and chair made of animal skeletons and meridians, sorting out the achievements of recent days. Magic crystal spell casting is still a black box operation. if there is no way to figure out the internal structure of the magic crystal, studying magic is a delusion. However, even the witch doctors who have mastered the casting ability do not seem to be able to directly observe the internal structure of the magic crystal. What is known is that witch doctors can feel the energy in the body, and by inputting this energy into the magic crystal, they can form magic. And after this energy is output, the feedback given to the body is the loss of vitality. Then the question arises. The so-called vitality should be a kind of energy shared by all living things and a necessity for life activities. Take the trolls as an example. The warriors are obviously strong, but they cannot mobilize this energy. The witch doctors, who are not stronger than the warriors, and may even be inferior in terms of physique, can do it. Can we make an assumption from this, that the key to the problem does not lie in the vitality itself, but in the means of being able to feel, and even control vitality? Since perception and manipulation are required, there must be a medium involved. Although it seems a bit unreliable to use fantasy novels from previous lives as a reference, it is quite appropriate to introduce the concept of mental power here. Based on the experience of their ancestors, witch doctors do not value physical fitness when testing witch doctor qualifications, but instead consider memory. It seems that this can also be used as a proof. After a series of thoughts, Baki decided to assume that there is a medium called mental power and regard it as the key to opening the door to magic. Although it is somewhat arbitrary, there is nothing we can do about it. Instead of letting our thoughts diverge aimlessly, we might as well set a possible direction to concentrate our thinking. Then, the next task is to come up with a way to artificially accelerate the growth of mental power. Today's witch doctors are just waiting, which is too passive. Let me think about how to start the research. After a simple thought, Baki decided to first come up with a set of logically self-consistent theoretical systems to quantify the mental power values at each stage, so as to facilitate future work, even if this system is composed of brain supplements. The old witch doctor told me that after he tested his witch doctor qualifications, he waited for 2 more rounds of middle age. Note 1. Before the day of awakening came. This means that spiritual power can grow, and its growth will not stop with the end of physical development. But ordinary trolls also have a very long period of time from middle age to old age, but they still haven't awakened. There are many possibilities for the difference between the two. 1. The mental power of those with witch doctor qualifications can grow. The mental power of ordinary trolls is a fixed value. 2. Mental power qualifications will affect the mental power growth curve. Those with witch doctor qualifications grow faster, while ordinary trolls grow slower, and the difference in their rates is large enough. 3. The growth rates of both sides are the same, but the height of the initial base determines the order of reaching the awakening point. Wait. Don't worry about the growth of the mental power of ordinary trolls for now. The script of the rise of the trolls in the crossing is not yet staged. Ordinary trolls will serve as the average for the time being. Assume an interval first, with values of 1 to 10. The average value of a newborn is 1, and the awakening point is 10. Assuming the average peak value of the race is M. Troll warriors are generally stupid. Let's set it at 2 to 4. Then the range of qualifications. Let's assume it is 5 to 9 according to the level of qualifications. I should be considered to have relatively good qualifications, so I'll be modest and set it at 8. Then there is only 2 growth points away from the awakening point. But the awakening point is not the goal for me. Even if the witch doctors awaken, they still can't figure out the situation inside the magic crystal. After awakening, at least you have to cross the level again to succeed. If there is indeed a level to cross. Note 1. The so-called adultering is a method of recording age that Baki came up with the old witch doctors after introducing concepts such as numbers and age. The bodies of trolls reach their peak in their adulthood, and this peak will last for a long time, until they reach old age one day. Therefore, they divided the life of a troll into 3 stages, namely growth period, adulthood, and aging period, and 1 adultering is equivalent to the total time it takes for a troll baby to grow into a warrior. In addition, growth targets such as high calf and high thigh were improved. referring to the growth cycle of the dragon in the novel of the previous life. The growth period of the troll was divided into 5 stages, namely high calf in infancy, high thigh in adolescence, high lower abdomen in adolescence, high chest in youth, and high shoulder in adulthood. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8. Research on the growth of mental power. The quantification of mental power can only be done to this extent for the time being. These data have not been tested in any way. Strictly speaking, they are not credible at all, and can only be regarded as a preliminary reference. Although Baki made it to the doctoral stage in his previous life, he was not actually a scientist, and his academic performance was also average. He barely managed to write a graduation thesis. Moreover, he studied law after undergraduate studies, and had no research experience related to natural sciences. Therefore, he was not very sensitive to research itself, and many things could only be thought of one by one, lacking coherence and rigor. However, there was no other way. For the sake of magic, he had to bite the bullet and do it. I have to do the initial research by myself. After I figure out something, at least with a clear direction, I can discuss it with other witch doctors. They are actually not dumber than me. In terms of brain power, they are even much stronger than me. What they lack is knowledge and imagination. Anyway, consider the possible directions first. First of all, since mental strength affects memory ability, will exercising memory accelerate its growth? It feels a bit reliable, but the only way I know to improve memory seems to be eating more walnuts. Baki, who deeply realized that you only regret not having read enough when you need it, and regretted that he didn't memorize it from Beidou back then. After racking his brains, he reluctantly came up with a practical method that felt a bit scientific. Just like muscles can be trained progressively by 5 kilograms, 10 kilograms, 10 times, 20 times, the brain should also be trained in this way. Just memorizing books should not work, that's too mechanical. We should design graphics that go from simple to complex and are related to each other to assist training. In the novels of my previous life, there were some meditation methods and visualization methods. The former is too general and not very clear, but the visualization method seems to be to imagine a specific image of white tiger, guanyin, etc. in my mind. I don't have to visualize these things, but the visualization method and complex graphics let's call it graphic meditation method. The two seem to be related. After initially determining the direction of progress, Baki began to think about more specific things, such as combining methods, meditation content, etc. First, the content of visualization. The things to be visualized must be related to the things in need. For example, if you are practicing Ape Demon Fist, then the content of your visualization should include ape appearance. Secondly, there is the principle of starting from the simple to the difficult. The first stage should be from nothing to something. Take the Ape Demon Fist as an example. At the beginning, you have to be able to visualize the ape. Even a simple sketch is not easy, let alone a vivid one. The second stage seems to be from static to dynamic. Still using the Ape Demon Fist as an example, since you are practicing boxing, don't you have to let the visualized ape image fight? The third stage, perhaps, is from image to god. Still using the Ape Demon Fist, since your boxing method explains the word demon instead of ape god, ape saint, shouldn't your visualization picture also be given corresponding spiritual attributes? To be honest, thinking of this, Baki is a little confused. Is this visualization method something from the online novel in the previous life, or does such a training method really exist in the previous life? Because he feels that this set of theories he imagined is simply too similar to that thing. Stop habitual daydreaming and return to the problems faced in reality. Baki felt that the above 3 stages were enough in terms of purpose. If they were to follow the steps, there would be absolutely no problem in training memory. However, the theory that seemed too realistic further stimulated his ambition. He felt that by using this scientific visualization theory, he could also create a set of methods specifically for the growth of mental power. Here, he referred to the targeted method, the main purpose of which was cultivation rather than training. To be more specific, if training means using the complexity of the visualization diagram to train brain power and mental power, it is similar to muscle training in logical principle and belongs to the realistic training method. Then cultivation is like practicing 8-demon fist through 8-demon visualization, which is more inclined to the fantasy training method. As for whether it can be successful, to be honest, he didn't care much. If it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Even if the cultivation is not successful, the training part of the process is not discounted, and the envisioned goal is still achieved. Besides, this is a time travel, so don't you need to be more imaginative? What should we do specifically? It's such a waste to just utilize complexity. As far as the theory of my previous life is concerned, complex life evolved step by step from single-celled organisms, and the human body is also composed of many cells. After countless years of co-evolution, the cells have already had clear-cut functional divisions, but this cannot deny the existence of independence between them. It should be like this. Baki came to this conclusion a little unconfidently. He had never studied biology in detail in his previous life, and the period of systematic study of biology in his life was limited to his second and third year of high school. And because he was studying liberal arts, the content he learned was not very deep. In addition, it had been too long since he graduated from high school, and he only remembered the knowledge roughly. Well, be more confident, it must be true. In short, cells have a certain degree of independence. Individual cells have life attributes, no matter how weak they are. Only when they are gathered together can there be human life. Similarly, thinking, spirit, etc. should also be the product of gathering sand into a tower. Targeted methods may be able to start from here. Although the cell theory is a theory of the previous life, this troll body in this life shows that it also has a similar structure. The cell structure of troll cells must be very different from that of human cells. Even the basic element at the microscopic level are different. But as long as they can roughly correspond at the cell level, it will be fine. With a general direction, Baki began to conceive the meditation method again. The first step is to imagine a roughly equivalent troll body. The second step is to perfect the organ structure of the imagined body. The third step is to use cells to reconstruct the body. The fourth step is the integration of the body, organ structure, and cell structure. The fifth step is to give the mental power attributes from the body to the cells. The sixth step is to graft one's own thinking consciousness onto the body in meditation. This is roughly the idea. From the third step onwards it is a big project and the specific operations can only be slowly figured out through practice. Chapter 9. Exploration and Practice of Meditation. After the idea was sorted out, Baki immediately began to put it into practice. The first step went smoothly. It only took 2 or 3 days and nights to build a troll body based on his own template. But the second step encountered trouble. The organ filling was very successful. Every time, he could perfectly produce the required part through his excellent brain power. But the problem was that the organs he made were basically empty shells, and they had no use except for similarity. This was of course impossible. According to the plan, at least at the level of organs, they had to be almost the same. So Baki quickly commissioned the warriors to secretly get a few living trolls from the enemy tribe for exploration. Since there were not many materials, he had to reuse each body as much as possible. Although the terrifying vitality of the trolls was enough to support the research that the human body in the previous life could not bear, it was not necessarily the case in other aspects. After all, trolls are not insects. When the body is injured, especially the continuous injury such as surgery, the accumulated pain is enough to kill them mentally. Moreover, to be honest, Baki's own mental toughness was not enough to support him to ignore the pain and wailing of the research subjects and complete the experiment. So, it may be a bit hypocritical, but he still wanted to eliminate the pain of the research subjects as much as possible. Fortunately, this is not something that cannot be done. In the inheritance of the tribal witch doctor, there are things with functions similar to sleeping potion and pain slow release potion, which are made from plants in the forest. The former is widely used in hunting traps. The latter is a must-have good medicine for troll warriors when facing strong enemies. These two potions, after slightly changing their ingredient ratios, can easily become a new drug with long-lasting efficacy, drowsiness, and pain-shielding effects, which is enough to be used as a surgical anesthetic. Of course, this work was not done by Baki alone. Among the 3 witch doctors in the tribe, the one who is neither older nor younger, because of his long-term research on potion preparation, has excellent understanding and insights in this field, and easily solved this problem. Baki just played a hand. Now, everything was ready except for the east wind, but the east wind was not blowing. Excuses such as the bone knife was not sharp enough and the indoor lighting was too poor were used over and over again. Until one day, Baki found that his work bag was filled with various bone knives of different sizes, and the walls and roof of the house were also blasted out with lighting holes of different sizes by the soldiers he had found. He could not delay any longer. Muttering trivial words, Baki reluctantly walked into the studio and stood in front of the laboratory table. In front of him was a sleeping blue-skinned creature, which was too similar to the trolls he lived with in the tribe. Or to say, the appearance was exactly the same, reminding him of something at any time. This is an intelligent life that is no different from you. Now, you are almost dissecting and studying it like a little white mouse for your own selfish desires. It seemed that there was a voice questioning his conscience. No, this is a blue-skinned beast. There is no time for you to waste. Hurry up. Another voice seemed to be urging him, and it had been going on for several days and nights. Medical students are awesome, I can't help but admit it. He patted his cheeks hard, took out the prepared bone blade, and began the follow-up work with gritted teeth. The anesthetic had been applied, and the bone blade was pushed down hard to open the wound. The operation was carried out intermittently, and the research continued day by day, and many problems occurred during the process. The troll's epidermis was much tougher than expected, and the bone blade was not as easy to use as expected. He, a troll alone, could not be fully competent for many tasks such as hemostasis and suturing. Such problems were relatively simple to deal with. The former was just a matter of the force of the knife, which was easy to solve. The latter, he quickly pulled the youngest witch doctor to do hard work by arousing his interest in the body structure. But the progress of the experiment was still slow. The reason might be that the function of human organs in his previous life brought him a considerable degree of thinking inertia. When studying the organ structure and organ function in the trolls, Baki always subconsciously thinks in the human body and painstakingly searches for organs such as the heart, liver, lungs, spleen, stomach, kidneys, and intestines that were familiar to him in his previous life, or their substitutes. But it turns out that these human organs and their corresponding functions are not necessarily reflected in the trolls. Some functions were eliminated, and naturally there was no trace. Some functions were attained, but merged with other functions to form a new organ system, and some functions were strengthened to an incredible degree, and in order to correspond to the strength, the organs formed by them have been completely changed. Of course, these so-called elimination, retention, and strengthening are all based on thinking from the perspective of the previous life, resulting in differences in concepts. From the perspective of the trolls, all of this is the result of the evolution of life, and it should be so. The research continued for a relatively long period of time with bumps and bruises. Fortunately, the trolls were not afraid of infection, and had strong vitality, which made the experimental consumables not too serious. In addition, there were many troll tribes in the forest. They stole from one person in the east a day, and then stole from the west after a while, without causing any big disturbance. As for the research results, they were available every once in a while. The results were either large or small, complementary or negating each other, and the old conclusions were overturned by the new conclusions, but they were reborn in the latest conclusions. These phenomena were endless, but they all provided Baki's meditation method with a precious direction for progress. Unconsciously, not only did the visualization target in the meditation method grow in the overturning of the old and the new, but even the visualization speed, accuracy, and connotation had made great progress. In the past, when Baki was meditating, it always took a certain amount of time to create the target from scratch. Now, with the repeated meditation, it has almost become an instinct. As long as he has the intention, the body and the visualization will be formed according to the system logic. This system logic is the product of research. He successfully replicated it into meditation by simulating surgery in his mind. While the meditation method was constantly improving, Baki did not notice his progress in thinking and so on. He occasionally wondered, oh, why is it getting easier to visualize? And simply attributed it to practice makes perfect. Until one day, just to adjust his mind from the research, he came to the warehouse where the magic crystals were stored and prepared to clean up. When he picked up a low-level magic crystal, he simply tried to output out of habit a fireball tuck shape and was launched with a whoosh. With the sound of booming, the shelf in front of him collapsed and Baki was stunned. At this moment, with a faint sense of fatigue in his body, he finally realized what happened. He awakened. Chapter 10. Phase Success. Minor revision. Modified dialogue. In a moment of daze, Baki felt the changes in himself. It was not just fatigue, but the vitality in his body that was almost invisible, which was sensed by some invisible force. He was so excited that he didn't care about cleaning up the mess. He held the magic crystal tightly in his hand and jumped out shouting, "Old witch doctor! Old witch doctor! I succeeded! Come and see!" The witch doctors lived in the same courtyard. When they heard the sound, they all stopped their work, walked out of the house inexplicably, and looked at him in confusion. Look. As he said that, Baki tried to repeat the previous situation. Because he was too excited, he tried several times in succession before he successfully found that perception. A force was poured into the magic crystal, and a fist-sized fireball tuck shape. It shot on the ground in the stunned eyes of the three witch doctors and exploded a shallow pit of half a meter square and half a palm deep. Hey. ZHA. Ha. Three clear and loud voices that seemed to express the feeling of WTF came from three directions. Then, three witch doctors quickly surrounded Baki. One of them quickly snatched the magic crystal, fearing that he would continue to waste his vitality. The other two also looked at him in amazement while blaming him. Genius. They could not help but be surprised, because even the most talented one among the three had to wait for 2 mature years before he could get such ability. The remaining 2 trolls took even longer. And now, how old is this little troll in front of them? He is not even as tall as the chest of mature warrior. In other words, he has not even passed 1 mature year. Baki, how did you do this? The old witch doctor asked in surprise, stuttering a little. He instinctively realized that this speed could not be simply explained by the word genius. When thinking about Baki's research that had lasted for a long time, he had to connect the two. Therefore, there was a deep expectation in his inquiry. The tribe has long been in a social form of public ownership association. Whether it is visible and tangible material wealth or intangible intellectual products such as trap making, all means of production are habitually owned by everyone. Therefore, the old witch doctor did not realize that his inquiry might be an offense if it were in a different social context. Of course, Baki did not think so. During the research, the tribe provided him with food and clothes, and even any other needs. Those who were capable would unconditionally meet him. For example, the provision of materials, the manufacture of tools, and the improvement of anesthetics, etc., all of which were inseparable from the help of the tribe. Therefore, he did not feel unhappy because of the old witch doctor's inquiry, but instead planned to share the results from the beginning. Of course, this sharing is limited to the tribe. Witch doctor, I found a way to speed up the awakening. The tribe can share it, but you have to promise me to keep it secret. Can you? It has to be emphasized that these primitive guys can't suppress their desire to show off, especially those muscular warriors who don't have brains. If there is anything in the tribe that is a little bit better than others, they want to publicize it all over the world. This is not okay. Now is the stage of making a fortune in silence. Good things must be hidden until the day when they are strong enough. Yes, top secret, you are safe. After getting the guarantee, Baki felt relieved to share his ideas, specific steps, and current results about training with them. As for the part about cultivation, because it is still not perfect, and whether it is feasible, is there any danger, and other unknown factors, he chose to suppress it temporarily. He just mentioned that there are subsequent ideas for improvement, which are being studied. However, even just the description of the training part has made the witch doctor's eyes light up. They kept saying it turns out that this can be done this way, and went to practice and experience it. Baki, who was thrown away, just curled his lips and expressed his disdain for the witch doctor's throwing away after use behavior. He immediately suppressed his excitement and returned to the research room to continue his unfinished research. He understood that awakening can only be regarded as a phased result. The door to magic is now only shyly open to him in experience mode, and the more fundamental principles and other things are still dodging and refusing to show up. As for why he said that, because he had tried it before, the interior of the magic crystal was still in an unknowable and unreachable state. In other words, the reason and process of casting are still a black box operation for him. This is undoubtedly unacceptable to Baki, who is determined to become a mage. The results so far neither help to reduce the cost of spellcasting, nor help me understand the principle of spellcasting. It is far from the time to be complacent. Comrades still need to work hard. In this way, after a warning and admonition to myself, I finally suppressed my pride and other emotions, and began my research work as usual. In the following days, news from the witch doctors came one after another. It was not that they had made any major breakthroughs, but that they had made their own progress in the application of meditation. The 3 witch doctors did not copy back his conclusion, but chose a direction suitable for them to explore according to his ideas. For example, the great witch doctor who helped Baki perfect the anesthetic chose the plant growth that was more in line with his own meditation direction. He wanted to create his own meditation system, based on the process of plants taking root, sprouting and growing gradually. The old witch doctor was different from him. The meditation method he envisioned was to go from point to surface, from surface to body, and then to make his target approach to sphere by constantly adding new surfaces to the body, but he could not reach the sphere. Another example is the middle witch doctor who had previously served as an experimental assistant. Because of Baki's seduction, he gradually became interested in the body. His meditation method seemed to be ready to start from the troll growth aspect. Baki, the little witch doctor, did not interfere too much with the choice of the 3 witch doctors. More attempts are generally a good thing. But in the short term, he is more optimistic about the direction of the old witch doctor, which is simple and feasible. As for the remaining 2, because the direction they chose is too complicated, it is inevitable that they will encounter many difficulties in the process of improvement. However, the final perfection may be far away, but the training gained during this period is real. Therefore, Baki is not too worried, but rather has some expectations. Chapter 11, Mind Access and New Horizons. As time went by, when Blade Fang gradually grew to the height of a mature troll's chest, his research on meditation finally made further progress. A complete meditation target from the inside out, from the organ structure to the internal circulation, and then to the external manifestation, appeared in his mind. In other words, the first 4 of the 6 steps originally conceived have been completed. The first step is to imagine a roughly equivalent troll body. The second step is to improve the organ structure of the imagined body. The third step is to use cells to reconstruct the body. The fourth step is the integrated operation of the body, organ structure, and cell structure. Among them, the cell reconstruction part has a big flaw, and the reasons are 2 aspects. First, the lack of intracellular structure. Second, the failure of reorganization at the cellular level. The first problem cannot be solved for the time being, unless one day he can achieve cellular level observation. Otherwise this problem will always exist. And the second problem is that the energy level of brain power and computing power is not enough. Whenever he tries to further deconstruct the body to the cellular level, it will inevitably collapse. However, these problems are not without alternative solutions. After continuous attempts, he found that both problems could be bypassed through my thinking. In essence, the purpose of the research is not to reproduce the microscopic structure of the body exactly, but to cultivate mental power through visualization. Therefore, the key is belief. As long as you believe in the 2 concepts of the body is composed of cells and each cell has mental power attributes during visualization, then visualization can be established. In other words, brain supplement is the key to taking shortcuts. Moreover, this kind of my thinking incidentally solves the 5th step, that is, the idea of attributing mental power attributes from the body to the cells, or it can be said that it merges the 3rd, 4th, and 5th steps to some extent through brain supplement. In practice, Baki imagined a meditation space that is mutually complementary to visualizing the body on the basis of visualizing the body. This space has the following properties. 1. Nothingness and reality coexist. Mental power is in fact nothingness, which cannot be observed or verified. At the same time, it has empirical reality and affects reality through imagination. The space constructed by mental power is the same too. There are boundaries. It is composed of all cells, and the body and its extensions are both its carrier and its boundaries. In this way, while finally meeting the current needs, Note 1, it also leaves some room for future transformation. Note 2. Next, it is time to proceed to the 6th step, grafting one's own thinking consciousness onto the body in meditation. The so-called mind grafting is not as mysterious as imagined. It is basically based on deception and self-hypnosis. At all levels of consciousness, one makes oneself believe that the visual body is a starting point of one's own consciousness. For him now, it is not difficult to do this. After isolating most external disturbances during deep meditation, in the depths of self-consciousness, it is relatively easy to do this requirement. In fact, it was true. In the following not too long period of time, Baki easily accomplished the consciousness grafting with his slow work. When it was completed, the meditation space appeared in front of him for the first time. On the appearance, it appears as a troll body. When you ignore its appearance and go deep into the inner, a closed space will appear in front of your eyes. The outermost layer of the space is a spherical sealing membrane, representing the boundary. The inside is filled with a thin mist, representing the spiritual power. There is nothing else besides it, at least at this stage. Of course, whether it is the appearance or the inner, in a strict sense, they do not really exist in reality, but are just imaginary dimensions established based on meditation. After completing all this work, Baki picked up the low-level magic crystal at hand, and while pouring power into it, he felt the changes in the two dimensions of reality and imagination. In reality, the body felt tired. The degree of this was roughly similar to the feeling of being exhausted after lying on one side in the previous life. In the imaginary dimension, apart from the churning of fog, there was no other performance. Well, it feels not perfect enough. Let me think about what is missing. After a moment of thinking, Baki had an idea for improvement. After entering the meditative state again, he controlled the fog to gather together and form a blue lake, which was quietly deposited at the bottom of the space. Then, another fog that was much thinner than the previous one gradually formed on the surface of the lake. Compared with the tranquility of the lake, this layer of fog was much more lively, churning and bringing a little sense of reality to the illusory space. Dividing some energy, he tried to cast the spell again. First, half of the newly formed fog disappeared out of thin air. Baki changed the initial fog from a simple mental power concept to the vitality that carries thinking, and then gathered it into a lake, and the new fog represents the physical strength that can be used for consumption. When there is a strict boundary between vitality and physical strength, new changes will follow. As we all know, physical strength can be replenished. So from now on, at least when using low-level magic crystals to cast spells, as long as you pay attention, your lifespan will not be shortened. Although a magician who casts spells with physical strength always feels a bit different, the second change made him smile excitedly in the fatigue caused by continuous casting. During the casting process, as he input physical strength into the magic crystal, a new perspective appeared. Perhaps it was because he had determined the concept of the body and its extension are the carriers of mental power during the previous meditation, so his perception also had a new observation dimension at this moment. In other words, Baki finally obtained the means to observe the inside of the magic crystal. Note 1. The current need refers to the need for a meditation structure that can accommodate the body, organs, cells, and mental power at the same time. Note 2. The room for the future refers to the fact that, on the one hand, Baki is not sure whether mental power really exists, so he left behind the empirical reality. On the other hand, he is not sure whether mental power can be separated from the body, so he expressed it as the body and its extension are its carriers. If mental power is proven to exist in the future, the two concepts of empirical reality and body and its extension given today will become the so-called room. Chapter 12 Analysis of the Magic Crystal's Internal Structure. Strictly speaking, Baki was not sure whether he had really input physical strength into the magic crystal. It was not necessarily an illusion, because he had not actually observed this process in reality. It was just the fatigue of his body and the changes in the magic crystal that gave him the experience of I lost physical strength. The magic crystal gained energy, so my physical strength flowed into the magic crystal. For example, is there such a possibility? If his bioenergy did work in his body, thus leading to some external changes, and the abnormal movement of the magic crystal might be the secondary or even tertiary effect of this external change, and his energy only played the role of an engine in this process from beginning to end, and there was no so-called energy entity that entered the magic crystal to produce a reaction. However, it is not the time to delve into this process. Only when you can do more things through magic will it be time to go back and study the basic principles. For example, in the previous life, humans first learned to use fire, but it took a long time for them to truly understand the principle of fire. Baki, who knew what was most important at the current stage, decisively threw away all kinds of possibilities and focused on the simple phenomenon itself and the changes it brought. So, when physical strength was output and perception was extended, the horizon inside the magic crystal appeared in front of his eyes for the first time. Since mental power does not come with visual experience, this perception is very ambiguous. In comparison, if you, as a human, suddenly have an extra whisker organ for perceiving vibrations, the consequences may be similar. Therefore, although Baki vaguely felt the inside of the magic crystal, he could not gain anything immediately, and because the physical strength that could be consumed was limited, he could not observe continuously. Due to these limitations, he could only temporarily calm his curiosity and stop his research. Eat a full meal, meditate, study the magic crystal, eat, meditate, study the magic crystal. After several cycles, the research finally made some progress. There seems to be a structure inside the magic crystal. When energy interacts with this structure, changes will occur, and magic will be generated. In this process, his perception, or the physical strength attached to the perception, shows three tendencies. First, the vast majority of useless ones dissipate. Second, a small part undergoes changes and disappears in the changes. Third, a very small part still exists after the changes, and finally disappears as the magic takes effect. What do the three parts represent? Baki thought about it, and the useless part seemed to be the easiest to explain. Baki, who has been muttering magic shouldn't be like this for many years, firmly believes that it is the culprit that causes the troll witch doctor to cast Kryptonian life. That is, waste of vitality in the part that disappears in the changes is the necessary energy consumption for the magic to work. As for the last tiny, almost imperceptible part, he guessed that it was the key to fine casting in the future, such as precision guidance and extremely effective casting. In the following days, Baki, who saw the possibility of non-destructive spell casting, became more motivated and tried his best to compress his daily life. He only carried out necessary activities every day and spent most of the rest of his time on research-related work. He collected all kinds of low-level magic crystals in the tribe and reclassified them according to various rules. There is the most traditional classification by element, such as fire and water. There are also classifications by function, such as launching, shaping, protection, etc. There are also classifications by shape, such as spherical, cylindrical, etc. Through these classifications, he wanted to figure out whether the same type of spells have similar structures when changing. The spells released by low-level magic crystals have a certain degree of convergence. For example, the means of activation are mostly based on launching, and the shapes are mostly spherical and arrow-shaped. Through comparative research on them, Baki initially understood the structural differences of the corresponding parts. In addition, by comparing the same type of magic in low level and different levels, and using the lowest level magic crystals in the middle level twice at the risk of Krypton life, Baki discovered the difference in energy level. Although both are fireball spells, the fireballs released by low-level magic crystals and higher-level magic crystals have significant differences in power. This difference is different in the energy conversion stage. The high-level fireball spell is obviously more successful in consuming and compressing energy, and this consumption and compression is also achieved through the special structure during change. Therefore, for spells, Bacchus simply summarized a rule: energy plus conversion plus compression plus shaping plus excitation equals magic. Of course, since low-level magic crystals lack protection and direction and other seemingly more complex spell structures, this formula is currently only applicable to low-level offensive elemental spells. But this cannot deny that Bacchus' research has indeed brought a certain degree of revolution to mages. Through his familiarity with the changing structure in the magic crystal during the casting process, he can use energy relatively accurately. The part of energy that was meaninglessly consumed during the casting has been controlled to the lowest level at this stage. If we must quantify this process, if the previous energy utilization formula is 80% ineffective plus 19% plus 1% effective equals successful casting, then now, the 80% ineffective part can be reduced by the familiarity with the structure. The low-level fireball spell that he is most familiar with has even reduced the ineffective part to 40%. Although the saved energy cannot be used to increase the power of the spell, it can increase the number of non-destructive casting. For example, before, he could only release 2 or 3 fireballs in a short period of time with his renewable physical strength, but now he can do it 7 or 8 times in a row before his physical strength is exhausted. This degree of change is not insignificant, but Bacchus is not satisfied. The energy loss is still too exaggerated. Moreover, if we compare spells to the result of displacement, then the effect I can achieve is at best equivalent to a charging station. And the magic crystal is just a variety of electric vehicles. Without the magic crystal as an intermediary, I can't play any role in displacement. Bacchus imagined that in the future, when he went out with a sack of magic crystals on his back, when he met a hostile magician, everyone would first rummage through the sacks. He suddenly felt unacceptable. We have to find a way to bring the intermediary function back to ourselves, otherwise the restrictions will be too great. As for how to do it, he had a preliminary idea, which was nothing more than transferring the spellcasting process from inside the magic crystal to outside the magic crystal. To do this, it is necessary to further analyze the changing structure inside the magic crystal and find a way to reproduce it without the magic crystal. Please collect and comment. Chapter 13 New System. As a half-baked doctoral student in the humanities, Bacchus didn't have a personal experience of whether the scientific research in his previous life was tiring or not, but the magic research in this life has undoubtedly become an extremely physically demanding job. While his physical strength was constantly being consumed, he repeatedly explored the special structure inside the magic crystal. The changes in it were also recorded again and again, based on his perception. For example, in the process of fire element conversion, he focused on exploring even the slightest feature through the similarities and differences of the changes between different fire magic crystals, hoping to better find a way to replace the magic crystal. First, we have to find a way to replicate the process of change. For this purpose, he chose to focus on the concept of runes, imagining the special structure inside the magic crystal as the magic runes in the novels of his previous life, assuming that when energy passes through a certain rune structure, a certain change will occur, and the combination of multiple rune structures can form a complete spell. Why do we need to add the concept of runes? It is to facilitate the deconstruction of the complete change in the magic crystal, so that different parts of the change can exist independently and can be combined with each other during meditation. As for whether the magic rune really exists, it is not important. The key lies in the exploration process. In the form of constructing runes, the change process is simulated. Through repeated debugging, the simulation is constantly close to the natural state in the magic crystal. When this simulation process is successful, regardless of whether the magic crystal is the so-called rune structure, the rune has been established as an epistemology. This work is very difficult. Bacchus is almost multitasking. Holding the magic crystal in his left hand, he casts the spell as slowly as possible, and although his right hand is empty, he is also constantly operating the left hand synchronously. It's just that the process of change scheduled to occur in the magic crystal is transplanted into the meditation space. The meditation space, which is endowed with the dual concepts of physical strength plus mental strength, is in constant motion, leaving traces in the empty space, trying to synchronize the trajectory in the magic crystal. After countless attempts, Baki found helplessly that the possibility of completely reproducing the changes in the magic crystal in the meditation space was almost zero. Why is this? He tried to analyze the reasons for this difficulty, based on the differences between the two. The biggest difference between the magic crystal and the meditation space is undoubtedly their existence. The magic crystal actually exists in reality, so of course, the changes in the magic crystal, no matter how fantasy they are based on the rules of the real world, while the meditation space is different. Even if it is endowed with the characteristic of reality, this reality still remains in experience, and its influence on reality is based on fantasy, so there is a certain limit. When the influence is limited to itself, the boundary is still unclear, and it can be crossed through self-hypnosis and other means. But if the influence is spread to the reality outside itself, then its boundary will be revealed. When this boundary is transferred to the casting process, the reason for the failure is obvious. Baki's exploration of the structure of the magic crystal is actually based on the vibration of perception. The attempt to replicate it in the meditation space is also a simulation of vibration, and the rune is just a manifestation of the simulated change. The meditation space does not exist in reality, and the rune structure is just fiction. There is a wall between fantasy and reality. What will happen in the future is still unknown. But now, I don't have the ability to ignore the boundary created by this wall. However, as the saying goes, when a door is closed, a window will naturally remain. As the saying goes, everything is in relative motion. Once the cause is determined, we can find a way to solve it. Although Baki's previous life was neither fantasy nor magic, real-life education and various online novels gave him rich imagination and insights. And these two are the indispensable ingredients for the research institute. For example, just when he had decided to cast spells without magic crystals, the concept of runes naturally flowed into his mind. The research on runes had reached a bottleneck, and research directions that could be used as breakthroughs once again sprang up like mushrooms after rain. This is undoubtedly a great convenience brought to people by Elves. Looking at the witch doctors in this world, they are obviously no worse than him in terms of brain power and other aspects, but because of their lack of imagination, knowledge, and fantasy and vision for the future, they have to stagnate on the road of magic for countless years. Based on this inspiring idea, Baki had just experienced a setback in research, but immediately threw himself into the new stage of work with full enthusiasm. Since the boundary between reality and illusion makes it impossible to cast spells by simply meditating on runes, then on this basis, can't we add another layer of medium that can affect reality? In the new conception, he no longer seeks to restore the operating principle of magic crystals 100%, but instead looks for a breakthrough in difference. First, the step of replicating the runes in the meditation space will remain unchanged. However, the influence of the runes on reality will be deterred through the medium, so that the step of the runes shaping energy will be changed from completed in the meditation space as originally envisioned to carried out in reality. Therefore, in the repeated research, Baki first successfully replicated a set of fire magic runes in the meditation space by exploring perceiving vibrations. This so-called fire magic is the simplest spell that Baki can find. Its composition is simpler than the low-level fireball magic. The runes skipped shaping and only included two parts, energy conversion and excitation. Afterwards, he used the influence of the meditation space on himself and used a method similar to the previous visualization to connect the runes with language and hand movements. For example, when chanting syllables such as conversion and inspiration, the effects of conversion and inspiration that should have been possessed by the rune will be realized through sound vibration, and the matching finger movements will help the two separate vibration structures form a whole. This method, based on the fantasy of word spirits, spells, and casting movements in the novels of the previous life, makes the rune no longer directly affect the energy, but indirectly affects the energy through the medium of language and hand movements. Undoubtedly, the research was successful. He broke the boundary between fantasy and reality and successfully realized the spell without the assistance of magic crystals. Even if now, He can only use the fire spell, which can be called a chicken rib. It also means the birth of a new system. In this system, the caster can not only intuitively experience the amount of his own magic power, physical strength, avoid the unnecessary loss of life, but also avoid the embarrassment of relying on magic crystals. Most importantly, it makes magic research a possibility, and there is no need to be deterred by life and black boxes. Baki is extremely proud of this. His previous life of mediocrity makes his current achievements even sweeter. Chapter 14. The Trouble of the Witch Doctors. Minor revision. Dialogue changes. The new spellcasting system has been born, and Baki began to think about what to do next. Such enthusiasm does not mean that he has evolved into a qualified corporate slave, but that research has become a habit, based on fun in these countless days and nights. Therefore, this is far from being a simple corporate slave. In his thinking, he came to a conclusion. To date, the framework work on meditation and spell research has been declared completed. From now on, for a long period of time, at least before the research methods are innovated, it will be based on some work within the system that adds bricks and tiles, such as the expansion and generalization of spells and gestures, and the continuous analysis of new rune structures, the change of meditation ideas, etc. And Baki did not intend to take all these tasks on himself. There are still 3 witch doctors and witch doctor apprentices in the tribe, and they will appear more frequently in the future. Whether from the perspective of the development of the tribe, or from the perspective of the growth of the entire magic system, it is beneficial to appropriately distribute these non-pioneering research contents. Therefore, it was no longer advisable to continue to study in solitude. The most urgent task was to show the results, and explain the principles to the witch doctors. With this idea in mind, Baki knocked on the doors of the witch doctors one after another after a night's rest. Baki, you haven't been out for a long time. Why? The 3 witch doctors, who had not seen each other for a long time, were quite surprised by his long-awaited appearance. In fact, Baki, who had completed the witch doctor course and had the ability to cast spells with magic crystals, was already a qualified witch doctor. Although his experience was relatively shallow, it was time to take on responsibilities within the tribe according to the old calendar. However, on the one hand, he was still young. On the other hand, it was also Baki's performance that made the other witch doctors have more expectations of him in research, so there was no troll to urge him to perform his duties. Baki, who did not realize that he was absent from work for a long time, happily showed his latest results to the witch doctors and explained them. Meditation method, visualization method. Between the two is, this is the meditation space. In the magic crystal, runes, such as fire magic. This is how it will succeed after a fragmented and scattered narration, basically talking about whatever came to mind. Baki looked at the 3 witch doctors with a serious look, expecting them to respond. However, this time, the witch doctors failed to respond immediately. There is a saying in the previous life, a half step ahead is a genius, a step ahead is a madman. Now, although Baki may not be a madman in the eyes of the witch doctors, the shock he brought is no less. Magic crystal plus lifespan equals magic. This truth that has been maintained for countless years has become a thing of the past in the hands of this underage troll. Not only did he change lifespan to physical strength, but even the magic crystal was abandoned. The theoretical part, full of imagination and exploration spirit, made the witch doctors dazzled, and they even lost their ability to think in the overwhelmed. This, I don't understand. I'm not as smart as you. The old witch doctor, who came back to his senses first, picked up the crutches that fell to the ground in shock, and said so with emotion. Then, he said with some shame, to be honest, I don't understand you. The other 2 witch doctors were called back to their senses by his question, and they shook their heads, saying that they couldn't sort out the clues for the time being. Baki scratched his fangs helplessly, feeling a little distressed. There are still many subsequent studies that rely on everyone's collective wisdom. If this initial popularization cannot be achieved, won't we continue to work alone? This won't work. We must find a way to solve it. He only pondered for a moment, and then made a decision, saying, then, I will translate the text, which is easier than speaking. Hearing this, the witch doctors felt a little complicated. This complexity was not out of jealousy of genius. They were relatively pure and just felt guilty for being a drag on the team. They wanted to shirk responsibility, but the whole new world was right in front of them, and they were unwilling to miss it. After looking at each other, they nodded helplessly and accepted what they thought was a gift. Baki was not a troll with delicate emotions. He failed to understand the feelings of the witch doctors and left in a hurry. Looking at his hurried back, the old witch doctor calmed down, swung his walking stick, and knocked the other two thighs a few times, teaching them a lesson. Spirit. Shame. Being fed. Go and think deeply. He put aside how the old witch doctor encouraged his juniors. Baki returned to the house and began to think about how to proceed with the follow-up work. Not only witch doctors, if you want to let the later generations have something to study, you should also make a summary of your research content. Or take this opportunity to do it together. So, he took out the spare clay tablet, melted the surface, and began to think about a suitable title. Finally, he engraved the 4 big characters' principles of magic, preparing to use it as a summary of his research so far. In this work, he plans to start with conjectures on mental power, then construction principles of meditation method, construction principles of visualization method, combination of meditation method and visualization method to connect the past and the future, then the finale, characteristic analysis of magic crystal structure and material-free magic. Finally, forward-looking thinking on magic research as a summary. After all, these are all the contents that I have studied and concluded. I thought that there would not be much challenge, except that it takes time to write. But when I really started writing, Baki found that it was not an easy task to summarize it into a large volume that others could understand. First, his bad research habits became a stumbling block. Since he did not have the habit of recording and sorting out the trivial ideas during research, he wanted to complete the research in a systematic way, which became a delusion. The thinking work of recalling the nature was bound to take up a considerable part of his time. Secondly, as a book for all future researchers, it was inevitable to make a considerable degree of compromise in terms of wording habits, details, and omissions. Many words and phrases that he took for granted would be replaced. Some content that he, as a researcher, could just pass over in one stroke might be quite necessary in the eyes of later learners, and how to choose between details and omissions had to be carefully grasped. Thirdly, based on his fantasy and knowledge in his previous life, the connection between many viewpoints during research had a thinking order and logic that he took for granted, but now that he lacked those fantasies and knowledge, these taken for granted were not necessarily understood. Therefore, the logic of many contents in many chapters had to be resorted, and the connection ideas between each other needed to be clearer. Finally, a considerable part of his research on magic was based on the relatively vague part between reality and illusion. Whether it is runes, spiritual power, meditation, or visualization, if the later generations cannot have a relatively accurate understanding of the foundation on which they are based, and just blindly regard them as the ancestral law that cannot be changed for all eternity, it will undoubtedly become a huge hidden danger that can even destroy the entire system. Therefore, how to express it accurately has also become a very troublesome consideration. Based on these difficulties, Baki decisively gave up the delusion of completing this work in one go, and instead began to prepare for a long-term battle. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15, The Seminar and the Growth of the Witch Doctors. Revised. The dialogue was modified. First, he divided the planned content into more sub-items and planned to narrate them separately. After that, Baki completed the conclusion and summary of several sub-items and handed them to the other 3 witch doctors in the form of papers for them to think and study. After that, on the basis of giving the witch doctors sufficient research time, he organized several seminars. The seminars were extremely difficult, and he spent a lot of effort to express what he wanted to say clearly. There is a threshold for visualization. Only after meditation has a foundation, visualization can proceed smoothly. First, use meditation to mechanically train thinking ability, and then give the meditation target the attribute concept through visualization. Meditation space is a collection of attributes. At the knowledge level, it is necessary to distinguish the difference between reality and illusion. At the practical level, it is necessary to blur the boundary between the two through visualization. The vitality, cell energy plus cell consciousness, with tactile senses manifested, and the renewable parts of vitality are differentiated into physical strength and mental strength. And the concept of physical strength plus mental strength equals magic power is used to construct magic power. What are the advantages of introducing the concept of runes? Standardization and visualization casting without magic crystals. In this system, the key to the success rate of spellcasting lies in the two variables of mental concentration and media accuracy. The former refers to the process of replicating runes in the meditation space, the latter refers to the spells and gestures that affect reality. And the relative importance of these two is inversely proportional to each other. When we are focused enough, the requirements for the accuracy of the medium will be reduced accordingly, until a certain limit, and when we are not focused enough, the spells and gestures that are given meaning will bear more of the role of constructing the spell, also until a certain limit. And this boundary exists because the two parts of spirit and medium do not have the ability to produce spell effects alone. Therefore, no matter how much the sense of participation of a certain part is reduced, its existence must be guaranteed. In short, the meaning is just these few meanings. It is easy for him to understand it, but how to express all this in the troll language, which is far from perfect, is the most energy consuming part. Most of the time was spent discussing the wording with the trolls. Every time he had a headache, he regretted it very much. Why didn't he be hard-hearted and directly use modern Chinese? But now that things have come to this, he can't deny the conclusion he has struggled for a long time, right? He could only continue to persevere. Naturally, these seminars became occasions for him to answer the witch doctor's doubts unilaterally, although it cannot be said that they were completely useless. At most they only played the role of summarizing, revising, and describing the shortcomings. To be honest, such a seminar has a more prominent role in promoting the troll language than scientific research. It may be a little sad, and it may take too much energy, but Baki does not intend to give up. He wants to make seminars a normal practice and maintain them as a platform to promote common progress. Even if this progress is first reflected in the language, it doesn't matter. It can be regarded as sharpening the knife before chopping wood. But the witch doctors don't seem to agree with it. They think that doing so is a waste of Baki's time. Instead of feeding them one by one, it is better to spend precious time on Baki's own research. Baki naturally disagrees with this, but he is also vaguely aware of the witch doctor's concerns, so he seriously explains his ideas. In short, the new system needs collective wisdom and efforts, so the training of tribal witch doctors is urgent, and easy to understand textbooks have become a rigid demand, and the assistance of the old witch doctors is indispensable. After a thorough communication, he finally convinced the witch doctors, and the seminar format will be maintained. In the days that followed, as the number of seminars increased, the witch doctors made great progress in their knowledge, and the early unhealthy meeting format gradually changed. At first, the witch doctors tried to imitate, and in the form of papers plus reports, they thought about and restated the research content of Baki in a relatively simple way. After that, they conducted midterm reports, stage summaries and other work, based on their respective research contents. In particular, the old witch doctor distributed the paper meditation research, based on geometric structures consisting of points, lines, and planes at this stage, and reported and defended it at the subsequent seminar. The systematic summary and sufficient communication made great progress in the research of the old witch doctor, and also made him confident again. Therefore, the results of exploration of the direction of geometric meditation at the visualization level report on the successful combination of geometric meditation and visualization, a meditation space established, based on geometric meditation method, etc., came one after another in the following days. And one day, when the old witch doctor once again took out the construction of fireball runes and the conception of standard medium, it also meant that a new caster was born again. Baki was sincerely happy about the progress of the old witch doctor, and asked him how he felt after the breakthrough. In response, the old witch doctor said bluntly, "I can feel that this is a new world." The old witch doctor's choice of words and sentences was somewhat different from the ancient troll language, and had a bit of the modern troll language. This was another point that made Baki deeply gratified. The other two witch doctors also made significant progress. Although not as fast as the old witch doctor, they also made breakthroughs in their own fields and languages. For example, the great witch doctor published Common Plants, Choice of Plant Meditation Targets, Dissection and Conjecture of Black Vine, a meditation thinking, based on the growth of black vine, and phase results report of black vine meditation in the early stage. And when the old witch doctor made a breakthrough, the great witch doctor also quoted extensively and absorbed experience, and made several reports such as element of black vine visualization, combination of black vine meditation and visualization, and a meditation space constructed, based on black vine meditation method, and finally entered the new world with symbol culture and standard medium concept of vine binding technique as a stepping stone. The middle witch doctor also produced gratifying results. Several papers, such as Beasts and Magical Beasts, research on the similarities and differences of the anatomical structure of grass rabbits and wind rabbits, were summaries of his previous research contents, based on the format and content of Baki's papers, after he participated in several early seminars. After Baki and the old witch doctor published related papers, the middle witch doctor also accelerated his own research progress with the expansion of his horizons and the acquisition of new knowledge, and under the spur of clearer ideas. After that, a series of studies such as conjecture on the selection of animal type meditation targets, analysis of the possibility of the progressive species of meditation targets between single powerful magical beasts and lineage magical beasts, and wolf meditation. Meditation conception of low-level wind wolf served as a basis for establishing meditation. On the basis of studies such as concept of using magic crystal position in wind wolf visualization, preparation report on the combination of wind wolf meditation and visualization, and a meditation space, based on wind wolf meditation method and magic crystal position. He established his own meditation method system, and announced the opening of the door to the new world again with an article The Rune Culture and Standard Medium Conception of Windblade Technique. With this, the three witch doctors, based on Baki's new achievements, successively blossomed their own flowers, and crossed that threshold. The seminar was finally no longer his solo dance, and the idea of joint progress was truly realized. At this time, Baki had grown to almost the height of the troll warrior's shoulders, which meant that he was about to reach adulthood. Although there was no restriction in the troll tribe, that intercourse could only be carried out after adulthood. Generally speaking, young trolls would gradually mature during adolescence, high belly, and youth, high chest. With zero concept of chastity, tasting new things basically came quickly and early. However, he did not have any special expectations for this. In his previous life, Baki had come into contact with such a view. Aesthetics is acquired, and the distinction between beauty and ugliness comes from the indoctrination of the acquired humanistic environment. Perhaps it was for this reason that Baki's aesthetics had already been cultivated in his previous life, and this troll body did not have the cross-species aesthetic ability similar to that of the dragon. Therefore, although he had gotten used to the trolls in this life, after living with them day and night, and did not find them ugly, he definitely had no intention of having a taste of them. Fortunately, the three witch doctors were all single, so no one would make things difficult for him in this regard. Chapter 16 Enlightenment and the Literacy Dilemma, Part 1 Revision. Language settings will be changed here. In the center of the tribe, the witch doctor's courtyard was dug out with the efforts of the warriors. Several basements were dug out again. Hey. Several teams of troll warriors carried piles of clay tablets underground. The books piled up in the open air in the courtyard were reduced little by little, and all were moved before nightfall. Afterwards, the four witch doctors, including Baki, looked at the final result of several basements, and smiled with satisfaction. Baki, the last clay tablet, should be put by you yourself. The old witch doctor took a clay tablet with the four big words Principles of Magic written on it, and handed it to Baki. Well, it's finally over. It was such a long process. Baki looked at the clay tablet in his hand and sighed silently. When I was young, I didn't dare to imagine what's happening now. In just 1 year, I have accumulated more than the knowledge of several generations of sages. Baki, you have done a great job. My career started with the accumulation of previous generations. I don't dare to take credit for it. The credit goes to the witch doctors. Haha, a new era is coming. Let's move forward together. The old witch doctor said this at last, and Baki and the other two nodded in agreement. What they were talking about was the principles of magic, which was finally finalized after countless seminars, based on Baki's original idea, and adding the academic achievements of the three witch doctors. The clay tablets that were barely filled up in several basements undoubtedly far exceeded the knowledge accumulated by all the previous generations. This work contained countless efforts of the four witch doctors. What do you think about the new system classification and early childhood enlightenment discussed before? Back in the meeting room, the old troll used fire magic to ignite the newly built fireplace and the lamps on the wall that used animal fat as fuel and wicks twisted with fire-resistant monster hair, and asked, "Nightlight, wonders, great achievements of magic?" The tribal chieftain, who was also preparing to participate in the discussion, had obvious envy in his tone. Perhaps it was because the wood in the Black Forest was generally too damp, or perhaps it was for other unknown reasons, but in a tribe that had not yet figured out the skill of drilling wood to make fire, the scene in the meeting room at this moment was indeed incredible. As for the elementary education of young children, I agree with the old witch doctor's theory. The meditation methods of the other Baki, or myself, and Sharp Fang, the Chinese witch doctor who developed the Wind Wolf meditation method, are too difficult in the initial stage and not beneficial. Course Fang is right. I think so too. The threshold of elementary education can be low but not high. It will not be too late to discuss the future path from the stage of magic crystal spell casting. Sharp Fang Witch Doctor also expressed his agreement and turned to ask, "Baki, what do you think?" The geometric meditation method is the best. In this case, I will try my best to simplify the paper and make it easy to learn. I will work with you to formulate a charter at the next seminar. The old witch doctor stroked his beard in response and then looked at the chief who was listening and continued to ask, "How about the literacy of the warriors? It's difficult. So far, new words and phrases have been popularized, but there are less than 100 people who recognize Pinyin, and less than 20 people who can read. Since you were handed over, more than half of your adult life has passed. How short?" Old witch doctor, warriors need to hunt, gather, and defend. It's a heavy burden. They really have no time, and the chieftain picked his fangs and was hesitant to speak. Finally, he hardened his heart and said, "Besides, witch doctor, you teach. I, the other four warriors, will focus on the study of magic from now on, and will not teach anything else. Warriors are generally dull. With only 5 of us, it is not easy to popularize the new language, let alone teach writing. We can't take care of it. Besides, there are many who say don't learn, saying that hunting is useless. They are unwilling to learn and achieve results, and rely on coercion." The 4 witch doctors looked at each other and realized the difficulty of this problem. It's our negligence. It's a pity to waste time. Do you have any plan? After the old witch doctor finished speaking, the meeting room fell silent for a while. After all, countermeasures are not something that can be come up with by patting your head. I have a humble opinion. In the silence, Baki's voice sounded, and when he saw that everyone's attention was focused, he began to express his ideas. Because the discussion was too complicated, Baki stuttered in troll language for a long time before he fully expressed his meaning and completed the communication with other witch doctors. Generally speaking, their conversation is as follows. From here on, the following chapters will not imitate the damn original troll language because it cannot be changed. As for new readers, I can only say that in the previous settings, when the protagonist was creating characters, he directly popularized Chinese characters and modern Chinese grammar, so these conversations are feasible according to the logic of that time. But wasn't the setting changed by the advice of readers before? If you ask me to come up with a feasible plan directly, I really don't have that ability. So, what I want to express next is the idea. First, learning is a job that relies heavily on initiative, especially for warriors who don't have much time. We must let them understand why they need to be literate. To do this, we must first unify our own cognition and reach a consensus in a small range. From the tribe as a whole to the individual trolls, what are the benefits of letting the warriors learn to read? After that, we can use the unified conclusion to do ideological work for the warriors. Second, as the chief said before, the hunting burden is heavy, which means there is no spare time, right? This requires considering why there is not enough time, and in order to increase this time, what do we lack, and what can we do? Hearing this, all the trolls present were thoughtful. The old troll nodded and said, okay, strategies are born out of response to needs, and clear organization is a shortcut to conclusion. Let's discuss it. Let's talk about the benefits first, from the whole to the individual. Let me go first, and give everyone a start. Well, please go first. Please go. Then let me talk about the overall situation. The emergence of writing has made the accumulation and inheritance of knowledge more convenient. The innovation of the magic system has lowered the threshold for converting knowledge into power. All these changes have made me see the importance of innovation and development. And innovation and development not only requires geniuses like Baki to promote it on their own, but also ordinary witch doctors like me to serve as the cornerstone. Baki just smiled shyly when he heard this, and clicked his head to show his humility, and did not interrupt the old witch doctor's speech. Geniuses are hard to come by, and only one appears in countless generations, but witch doctors like me are different. As long as there is a civilized soil to breed, there will always be continuous appearances. So, civilization is necessary. And if the tribe does not want to continue to be barbaric, then for the tribe, mastering knowledge is no longer the responsibility of a few witch doctors, but will become the most important goal of all the tribesmen after survival. Therefore, the literacy of warriors must be urgent. Reader, come to the bowl quickly. Chapter 17 Necessity. After the old witch doctor finished speaking, the chief witch doctor also said, well, civilization still lies in the future. In our plan, the education of the little trolls has become a necessity. Under this premise, if the current warriors do not study hard, when the future batches of little trolls grow up, will the tribe be fundamentally torn apart? Just from this point of view, it is quite necessary to urge the warriors. Immediately afterwards, it was the speech of the middle witch doctor, speaking of knowledge, mathematics, geometry, physics, common sense and so on. There are more and more things to learn. The content has been increasing, but the growth rate of teaching power is far behind. If this goes on, almost all of our time will be spent on the popularization of elementary knowledge. From the perspective of the future development of the tribe, isn't this a huge waste? From this point of view, the literacy of the warriors must also continue. At the very least, it must reach a level that can help us share the basic education part, so that we can use our time on more difficult things. The speech of the middle witch doctor was a little harsh, which made the chief's face change slightly. If it was earlier, when he had just become the chief, he might have had an outburst, but now, he has restrained himself well. After all, the truth is like this, and it cannot be changed by a few nice words. Baki frowned slightly when he heard this. To put it in a positive way, the witch doctor's speech was straightforward, and it seemed that there was nothing wrong with it, except that it was unpleasant to hear. But after careful consideration, there was a hint of a chain of contempt between different divisions of labor. Fortunately, now that the total number of trolls is so small, the number of witch doctors is not enough to form a highly differentiated class, but it is hard to say in the future. With the increase in the number of witch doctors, even if most of them do not have messy ideas, as long as a few self-righteous witch doctors jump on the stage, it may cause a gap between the caster trolls and ordinary trolls. However, there seems to be a saying in the previous life, that when humans think, God laughs, and it must be the same for trolls. Especially for witch doctors who have active minds. You might be afraid that they didn't think in that direction originally, but after you mentioned it, it would promote their wild thoughts. When the middle witch doctor didn't have a clear inclination, Baki was afraid that his unwarranted accusation would cause conflicts that didn't exist to appear in advance. So, we should prioritize things, take one step at a time, and focus on the problem at hand. The other witch doctors, including the middle witch doctor himself, didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with this speech, so the discussion continued. Anything else to add? If not, follow this idea, organize it and pass it on. By the way, Baki, what about you? After listening to all the statements, the old witch doctor turned to Baki and asked, I don't have much to add here. It's just that we have to think about the ways and methods. It may not be effective for the chief to just talk about this kind of thing. Let me think about it. How can I make them realize the importance of knowledge? The old witch doctor thought for a moment and spoke again. By the way, didn't the Fang witch doctor develop wind walk, giant strength, and rage? Chief, you have experienced it, right? How about it? Are you sure you can hunt down an adult Smiladin? Note 1. After the blessing. Upon hearing this, the chief seemed to recall the feeling of being filled with power when the magic was added to his body. His eyes turned red with excitement and he replied excitedly, sure. Absolutely no problem. Well, it's good that you have confidence, Fang Witch Doctor. These spells are the most effective for you. How long can they last? I have improved the stability. Now the wind walk can last the longest and can last half a standard light hour. Note 2. Giant strength is okay. It can last for 5 standard minutes. Frenzy is the most unstable. It can only last for 1 light minute. Note 3. And there is a weak period of 3 standard light hours after the effect fades. If we hunt alone, we don't have enough time. Then, Chief, you should ask the warriors to look for the traces of the Smiladin these days and tell us as soon as they find it. Understood. Hearing that he seemed to have no chance to kill an adult Smiladin alone, the glory-hungry chief was a little disappointed, but he still agreed. Coarse Tooth, Sharp Tooth, the 2 witch doctors, please work hard and capture one alive after you get the news. No problem, leave it to us. Ah, old witch doctor. Isn't this too dangerous for the 2 witch doctors? Although the chief knew that the power of the witch doctors had changed, he didn't have a real sense of the power of magic, so he was worried. It's okay. Send 2 teams of warriors to assist and leave the rest to the 2 witch doctors. You have to prepare well in the next 2 days. The captured saber-toothed beast is waiting to duel with you. Under the watchful eyes of all the warriors, the chief stood up with a bang. His nearly 3-meter tall body was knotted with muscles, and he gave off a faint sense of oppression. He licked his thick fangs, and 2 visible streams of hot air spurted out of his nostrils. He said excitedly, I understand. Haha. Leave it to me. You reckless man is blocking the light. Sit down quickly. The old witch doctor scolded with a smile and continued to instruct. Send out all the half-grown boys and let them collect as many fruits and branches as possible. The warriors should also work hard these days, and each team should catch more prey except for the exceptions. I understand, but the food can't be stored. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be stored for too long. Just wait until the day when the Smiladin is caught. I understand. I'll give the order later. Well, didn't Smiladin take us to taste the cooked food some time ago? It really tastes better than raw meat. Note 4. Duel, strength, glory, bonfire, and food. Let the warriors and the cubs experience the changes brought about by knowledge first. This is good. This is good. Yes, raw meat and so on. We have been eating this kind of stuff for so many years. While everyone was discussing, Baki would occasionally close his eyes and listen quietly. If one ignores some of the old words, the conversations between the witch doctors and the chiefs often give him the illusion that I'm still on Earth. However, this kind of memory is only an occasional episode. After so many years, the Black Forest is now his hometown. In his previous life, he was not a master, so the proposition of how to make his hometown better was somewhat hypocritical for him. But now, Baki is one of the tallest people in the tribe, and helping the world has become a natural responsibility and habitual thinking direction. For example, now, he associates cooked food and bonfire with smoked meat. Note 1. Smiladin, a medium-sized predator. New standard for trolls. Medium-sized predators. Predatory monsters with a weight greater than 1 and less than 3 adult trolls. Small predators, with a weight greater than 1/3 and less than 1 adult troll. Macro predators, with a weight less than 1/3 adult troll. The magic core level generally matches its own ecological niche. Although the magic core level is not high, the natural magic ability that highly matches itself, coupled with strong physical fitness, ranks in the upper middle of the Black Forest food chain. It is alert by nature, good at seeking benefits and avoiding harm, and is not easy to be captured. Note 2. Standard lamp hour is a new unit of time. The time it takes for a standard lamp wick to burn out indoors is 1 standard lamp hour. Smilodon used his own feeling as the standard, and designed and manufactured the first batch of lamp wicks that could burn for about an hour in the previous life, with a large error as the standard. Note 3. Since the trolls themselves have no habit of keeping accurate time, Baki used the sexagesimal system to roughly design the concept of standard hours and standard minutes when designing the time conversion, and introduced the formula of 60 standard minutes equals 4 quarter hours equals 2 standard half hours equals 1 standard hour, which everyone said was good. Note 4. The tribe did not originally have the concept of raw food and cooked food, but with the appearance of the first skewer of barbecue, this distinction was also introduced by Baki. In addition, although eating cooked food occasionally has no effect, will eating cooked food for a long time have an impact on the trolls? It is still unknown. The experience of the previous life is not reliable in this regard. Chapter 18 The Solution. That's about it. Now let's talk about the warrior's time problem. Several of us have lived in the tribe for a long time, and many things have become a habit. So, even if a problem does exist, we may often be blinded by habit. So, Baki, you talk about this first. Okay, then I'll talk about my opinion. First of all, let's not talk about breastfeeding babies and mothers. Among the other trolls, teenagers and adolescents assist in production. Young people follow the team to study. Adult and strong warriors have to guard and hunt in batches, and old trolls are responsible for gathering. The children's range of activities is limited. Even the older children who are responsible for some gathering tasks only move around the tribe. But the members of the hunting team are different. Except for those who stay behind to guard, the rest of the warriors will spend most of the day on the road, tracking and returning. When luck is bad, it is not uncommon for this part of time to be calculated on a daily basis. The same is true for the old people in charge of gathering. Calculated in this way, the warriors' complaints about learning are understandable. That's right, but without hunting and gathering, how can the tribe survive? Well, the chief has hit the nail on the head. The primary production activities carried out to meet the needs of survival have consumed too much energy of the tribal people. This is the problem. And what we need to find a way to reduce this part of the consumption. It's not easy to solve. The distance of the hunting grounds and gathering grounds does not depend on us. The Black Forest is the owner of the hunting grounds. Moreover, rashly changing the long-standing hunting rules will cause unnecessary conflicts with other tribes. I also think the old witch doctor is right. If I had just become the chief, I would definitely say we can expel other tribes and occupy more hunting grounds. But now, although we have hundreds of strong warriors and are considered a large tribe within the known range, it is impossible to stop the siege of other tribes. No, the old witch doctor and the chief have misunderstood. It's not the time to start a war. My thoughts are elsewhere. Not the time yet. Hey, Baki, you have an idea? Fang witch doctor, don't get excited. I just made a slip of the tongue. The sound of the crutch interrupted the conversation that was about to begin. Ahem, there are 2 ideas. First, find a way to extend the shelf life of food. Second, change the way of obtaining food. Let me first tell you about my opinion on extending the shelf life of food. I have noticed that the more humid the environment, the faster the meat will spoil. Similarly, in warmer places, the meat will also spoil faster. Although what he said was certain, Baki had never observed such a thing. He was just guessing, based on the fragmentary knowledge from his previous life. So, to be on the safe side, he asked again, Chief, you spend more time dealing with prey, is that right? Baki Shaman is indeed a wise troll. If you hadn't mentioned it, I wouldn't have thought that he does have such a tendency. Thank you. With the chief's approval, then I will continue. From this, we can extend 2 exploration directions. First, improve the storage environment. That is, use a comparative method to find the best storage environment. For example, the difference between underground and above ground, the difference between ventilation and airtightness, and so on. Second, start with food processing. Since moisture can affect spoilage, try to control the moisture in the meat, grilling, smoking, blowing. Any method can be tried. Baki vaguely remembered that there was smoked meat and air-dried meat in his previous life, which seemed to be able to be preserved for a long time. But the problem is that he only knows the two terms smoked meat and air-dried meat. As for how to smoke and air-dry, he doesn't understand, so he can only rely on the literal meaning and give an ambiguous direction for them to try. I understand. I will try it. If it works, we can catch more prey at one time and store them. Well, I'll leave it to you, the old witch doctor agreed. In addition to storage, we also need to explore changing the way we get food. Since the difficulty of hunting is reflected in searching, traveling, and transporting, can we find a way to keep the prey in our tribe? As soon as these words came out, it was like a bolt from the blue, hitting the witch doctor and the chief's heart, and they were stunned. The idea is not simple, but the trolls have never thought of it. However, once the door was opened, the situation immediately became different. Yes, absolutely. Although there will be many difficulties, they can definitely be overcome. The chief said excitedly with shining eyes, looking like he couldn't wait to catch some prey and keep it. Well, finding a suitable target is definitely the most critical issue. The fanged witch doctor, who had the most in-depth research on mammals, fell into deep thought while speaking, and spoke again after a long while. First of all, it has to be a herbivore. We can't raise meat with meat. Secondly, since we plan to raise them as a source of food, the number must be large, so they have to be social animals. Thirdly, the growth cycle must be appropriate. If they grow too slowly, the burden will be too heavy. Finally, since they are to be eaten, the body size must also be taken into consideration. These are the points I can think of for now. Baki said to himself, awesome, these points seem to be on point. There may be another problem to pay attention to. When we were hunting, we found that, although some animals live in groups, they have the habit of mating and giving birth away from the group. If we want to raise them on a large scale in the tribe, this habit will be too troublesome. Sharp Fang nodded when he heard this. Indeed, the breeding habits must also be taken into consideration. Are there any animals that meet all of these points? My research does not involve this direction, or your trolls who are responsible for hunting know better. I'm not sure. After all, we have never considered this issue before. But there are indeed a few animals that may meet the requirements, but they don't have clear names. I will let the warriors catch them alive in the next few days and show you. Old witch doctor, what do you think? Well, let's do it this way. I'm really looking forward to it. While the old witch doctor replied, he gave Blade a thumbs up and then said to the chief, Chief, you go and make arrangements first. The warriors' tasks will not be easy in the next few days. Understood. Then I'll go. Knowing that the witch doctors might discuss issues related to magic research next, the chief, who realized that he could neither understand nor help, said goodbye very simply. After leaving the house, the lights illuminated a corner of the courtyard. The chief closed the door with his backhand and walked out of the courtyard. Behind him, as the door slowly closed, the darkness of the past years once again enveloped the courtyard. Knowledge is really a magical thing. The chief sighed and slowly walked into the tribe immersed in the night. Chief, are you going to listen to the witch doctors nagging again? Chief, I'm hungry. The warriors in charge of the night watch in the kindergarten area made various noises and greeted each other. Yeah, whether they are asleep or awake, let all the captains of the hunting teams gather in the open space and tell them that I have a task for them. Understood. In the darkness, a night watch soldier replied and left in a hurry. Chapter 19. Fire and Mud. After the chief left, the witch doctors discussed their experiences in the study of magic for a while, and then they all dispersed. Back in the house, Baki rarely studied magic, but once again carefully thought about the problem of food storage. In his previous life, as a city youth, he really had no chance to touch smoked meat and air-dried meat except for eating, let alone understand their preparation methods. Therefore, now he had to think about this problem from a possible technical perspective. The main cause of meat corruption seems to be the growth of microorganisms. What kind of conditions are needed for microorganisms to grow? Air and humidity. I can only think of these 2 points. Why haven't I read more books on this subject? The only way I can think of is the comparison method. Forget it, I'll try it myself tomorrow. With this thought in mind, he slowly entered his daily meditation, which was a daily compulsory course. As long as it was not a matter of life and death, he would not interrupt it. After about a lamp hour, he ended his meditation and fell asleep in mental fatigue. He called a few teenagers and told them to take some pre-made clay slabs and mix some more mud, then instructed them to pile up several simple square earthen stoves layer by layer. He also asked the teenagers to pick up some branches, leaves, and vines, and told them to pick up the drier ones as much as possible. He and the other teenagers used mud to make some containers similar to pots and bowls. After they finally shaped the clay pots and bowls, the teenagers who picked up branches and leaves also came back. He picked them out, placed the relatively dry ones at the bottom of the earthen stove, and lit them with flame magic. He planned to dry the stove first. Although he was not sure whether this was a necessary process, the wet mud layer was somewhat unsightly. The process of lighting the fire was not easy. After several selections, the wood still had too much moisture, resulting in thick smoke that was much more conspicuous in the fire, attracting a large group of unsophisticated guards. After sending away the tribesmen who came over in surprise because of the smoke, Baki almost cried out fuck as soon as he turned around. Beside the stove, the teenagers were already stunned by the flames that were occasionally raised. One of the little trolls seemed to be fascinated by the flames. Seeing the witch doctor go to deal with the big troll, he stupidly put his hand into the stove. Seeing this scene, Baki realized that he was stupid. These little trolls had never seen fire. When he hurried over and pulled away the little troll who stretched out his hand, the panicked face once again stunned him. Is this the expression of pain? Burns? What's going on? He hesitated and slowly put his little finger close to the flame. I don't feel it. Half a palm away, it's a little hot, but not too obvious. The flames passed by, and Baki subconsciously wanted to withdraw his hand, but the feeling from his palm stopped him. It's just a little hot. He began to doubt his life. Was it because the fire wasn't hot enough? Or was the troll too thick-skinned? He hoped it was the latter. Witch doctor. Sorry. The cautious voice of the little troll startled Baki, who was in doubt. He looked back and saw that it was the boy he had just pulled away. The little troll still had a scared expression. Baki smiled and patted the dog's head and comforted him. It's okay. I'm just afraid that you will get hurt. This was obviously a smart child. His exploration of the flames showed curiosity, courage, and a desire to explore. He knew how to apologize, which at least showed his understanding of language. Baki felt that this should be a good seedling. What do you want to do in the future? He asked. I want to be a brave warrior. What came out of his mouth was the longing he had seen and heard, but the flames that flashed in the corner of his eyes made the little troll hesitate. What is that? Is it the power of the witch doctor? No, it is the power of knowledge. The witch doctor is just the agent of knowledge. The little troll looked conflicted when he heard the answer. His blue skin wrinkled and squeezed together, and the fangs that had just grown out of his lips became much more conspicuous. Baki was instantly bored by his ugly appearance and wanted to laugh it off and continue with the things at hand. But then he thought, cubs are generally cuter than mature individuals, so wouldn't he be uglier now? Thinking of this, he stopped his disgust, put on a somewhat stiff smile and encouraged, it's not the time for you to make a choice yet. The witch doctors will increase your learning content in a while, so work hard then. The nearly adult troll's facial skin already had some keratinization, and the stiff smile and sincere smile could not be distinguished very clearly. Therefore, the little troll happily accepted Baki's encouragement and continued his child labor career. After sending the little troll away, Baki looked at his fingers that had been stung by fire before and fell into thought. After trying the touch the fire behavior several more times, he gradually figured out his own boundaries. The outer epidermis has a certain degree of fire resistance, and only after a relatively long period of external flame burning will obvious damage occur. This is good news. Although I haven't thought of what this feature can be used for, it is always a good thing to be immune to fire to a certain extent. In addition, there is the smoke. At first, he was troubled by the firewood in the Black Forest that was always wet and not easy to burn, but looking at the rising smoke, he had a new guess. Is this so-called smoke meat smoked with this kind of smoke? After secretly noting this fleeting thought, he felt that it would be a waste to use the smoke only for baking the stove. So, He set up a horizontal and vertical support on the stove and placed the mud container that had been simply shaped before on it, trying to see if it could be used to accelerate the dehumidification. The soil used for mud is basically the clay soil that the warriors dug and stored to make mud tablets. Depending on the location of the land, the properties of the finished product will be more or less different. Baki plans to select the most suitable type of mud for making cooking utensils from these muds. Specifically, it must have a certain degree of thermal conductivity while ensuring fire resistance. At least, it must be able to boil water. Previously, Baki led the boys to build a total of 3 earthen stoves and need more than 10 simple cooking utensils. When all this was done, a long time had passed. The little trolls were already tired and hungry, and Baki planned to simply roast some meat to reward them. After taking the meat, washing the blood off, inserting branches, and randomly placing it on the rack, in the gaps between the cooking utensils being roasted, the golden fat gradually precipitated and dripped into the flames below, making bursts of sizzling sounds. The unique aroma of the meat, when it was roasted, also gradually became stronger. The little trolls had never smelled a similar smell, and their saliva could not stop secreting, even flowing out from the gaps between their fangs and lips. It can be said that really drooling. Chapter 20 Barbecue and Sudden Intentions. Blade Fang Witch Doctor, what is this? Why does it smell so good? Give me a bite. Give me a bite. The aroma of barbecue spread out of the courtyard, attracting a group of adult warriors again. They gathered together with drooling mouths, staggering like zombies. When the little trolls saw the big trolls coming to grab food, they instinctively bared their teeth, leaning against the earthen stove like a puppy protecting food, trying to block the warriors' progress. Hey, little cubs have learned to bar their teeth. Get out of the way. The leading warrior pushed his belly out, pushed open a passage and squeezed in. The remaining trolls also poured in like water in the eyes of the little trolls. However, the warriors did not have the habit of snatching food, especially snatching food from the children of their own tribe, which was a shame. They just surrounded them curiously, drooling as they watched Blade Fang turn the branches. After a while, when evenly charred marks appeared on the surface of the meat, Baki took the barbecue from the rack, saying, "Get out of here, don't crowd around." He passed the skewers of meat to the little trolls through the gaps between the warriors' bodies. After losing and regaining the meat, the little trolls were not excited about eating meat. Baki said to the warriors around him, "Is it delicious? Delicious. Greedy. Do you want to eat it? Yes, I do. Then learn to read. Idiots are not qualified to eat barbecue." As soon as Baki finished speaking, there was a lot of complaints around him. Explanations such as, "Why is this happening? I'm starving. I'm not stupid. I'm a good hunter," came one after another, almost making him deaf. However, among these complaints, there was a clear voice like a grey wolf mixed in with a husky. "Witch doctor, I can read. I can read." Following the voice, he saw the owner of the voice in the warrior's equally surprised eyes. It was a troll not much taller than Baki, not too thick fangs, not completely keratinized epidermis. Looking at the appearance, it seemed to be a sub-adult skill trainee. This must not be one of the trolls that he and other witch doctors taught hand by hand. Baki became interested and handed over a branch and ordered, "What's your name? Write it on the ground." "Okay, okay." The sub-adult in turn was very happy that he was about to eat barbecue. After taking the branch, he immediately squatted down and gestured on the ground. The characters were not beautiful, crooked, and even ugly, but his expectant eyes were bright. However, being able to write a name does not count as literacy. So, Baki recited a few common phrases and asked him to write them out one by one for assessment. It turned out that this in turn did not lie. He wrote most of the words fluently without much thought. And occasionally, he could replace the words he didn't know with pinyin. "Okay, you are good. Our witch doctor keeps his word. This barbecue is yours." There was no extra barbecue, so Baki handed over the one he prepared for himself. The intern took the barbecue, and in the envious eyes of the surrounding trolls, for the first time in his life, he felt something else to be proud of besides bravery. Looking at the reactions of the trolls, Baki said in his heart, "The trolls are promising." He clapped his hands, attracting the attention of all the trolls, and said, "See this pile of soil? This is called a furnace. See the light in the furnace? This is called a flame. Whether it was eating meat or eating their own saliva, the trolls nodded to show that they understood. These are the fruits of knowledge, and the words that the chieftain chanted every day and forced you to remember. The words that you thought were useless for hunting and were a waste of time and unwilling to learn are the carriers of knowledge. As he spoke, the trolls who could not read a single word showed a wise look in their eyes. And as if he realized that his words were not well understood, Baki changed his words again. If the hand is a limb that you hold the spear, then the words are equivalent to the hand for knowledge. Only by mastering the words can you use the knowledge as freely as you use the spear. This analogy may not be very accurate, but the feedback it received was much better than before. At least, most of the trolls were no longer wise, but showed an expression of "so that's how it is." Baki nodded in satisfaction and struck while the iron was hot again. Go back and tell all the tribesmen that starting tomorrow, no matter who it is, as long as they remember 100 words, they can come to my place for a barbecue. Hearing this, the greedy trolls became excited and were ready to find someone to learn. How many of them were just 3-minute enthusiasms, and maybe they would never do it again? Baki didn't know. But he believed that every troll who really wanted to learn to read would be a help to the tribe. Then I'm at a loss, right? An untimely voice sounded. It was the sub-adult troll who could already read, looking at him with a tangled face. Baki's mind turned, and he immediately understood what he was thinking. So he asked, "How many words do you know? Are you familiar with Pinayan?" "There are more than 800 words, and I'm familiar with Pinayan," he answered a little embarrassedly. This number surprised Baki. When he graduated from elementary school in his previous life, he seemed to be able to recognize about 3,000 words. In comparison, this Muya can only be regarded as half-blind, which seems not worthy of praise. But in fact, it cannot be simply compared like this. The learning environment of the two is very different. Nodding with satisfaction, Baki responded in his expectant eyes. Starting tomorrow, you can come to eat 8 barbecues. As soon as the word 8 came out, he knew that this was a stupid promise. How could he have so much time to barbecue for them all day? So, Baki changed his mind and said, "Well, I will teach you how to barbecue in a while. Starting tomorrow, you will be half a cook. I will try my best to keep the fire burning here. If it goes out, you can come to me again." Okay, I will definitely learn it well. Well, but remember, your current level can only eat 8 times. If you want to eat more, you must continue to work hard. Wait, I will think about it. If you can organize everyone to learn to read in the extra time and teach each tribe member 100 words, I will not only reward you with barbecue, but also more things. Witch doctor, is there anything else delicious? A troll asked on behalf of almost all the trolls. It doesn't have to be food. Better weapons and better protective gear. I will discuss a reward method with other witch doctors. No matter if you can read or teach others, no matter who can do it without affecting production, there will be a reward. Oh, learning, reading. The simple trolls still had a simple way to express their excitement. They raised their hands and shouted, "Well, there will be an unprecedented gathering in the tribe in a few days. We will officially announce it then." Finally, Baki used this as a summary of this episode and sent the warriors away. Chapter 21 Success and Failure. In the following period of time, apart from his daily meditation, Baki spent most of his time on making tools and processing meat. Among them, the former made great progress. After more than 10 attempts, he successfully found a soil with just the right thermal conductivity and heat resistance after the finished product. After that, he immediately took the results to the witch doctor and the chief to show the flavor of boiled meat. After tasting boiled meat, the decision makers who tasted better than raw meat made a large-scale reserve of the soil named clay by Baki. He also roughly taught the young trolls crafts such as starting fires, building furnaces, and making pottery. Although the making of flames can only be done by spells, they have figured out a way to preserve the fire, which greatly reduced their dependence on witch doctors. So, Baki decisively withdrew and planned to focus on other aspects. It is worth mentioning that, although it is pottery, it is something in quotation marks after all. He is not sure whether it is pottery or tile or something else. But since the purpose has been achieved, there is no need to be too entangled, and it is simply named pottery. As for the future development of pottery, let it be left to the power of time. In addition to pottery, another research carried out simultaneously is not so smooth. He tried smoking, fire roasting, air drying and other processes in turn, and the raw materials were also tried from small pieces to whole ones, with hair, hairless, with skin, and skinless. The storage environment was also tried in ventilated open air, ventilated underground, closed underground, etc. But no matter how hard he tried, the result was that he could not overcome the humid decay of the Black Forest. Baki, forget it, don't toss it anymore. When checking one of the basements, the Chinese witch doctor who was blocked at the entrance and exit by the stench, and covered his nose advised earnestly. Looking at the scene inside, Baki was also helpless. It's okay. If you can't save it, then you can't save it. The Chinese witch doctor comforted. Alas, how could this happen? Have there really been no cases of wild animals licking stones and eating soil? Baki, who wanted to struggle again, asked unwillingly. At least there is no relevant record in the tribe, and the warriors have not observed it. Besides, the livestock experiment you mentioned is already underway, so there will always be a suitable one among the several livestock. Don't think about it all the time. The answer was no different from the previous question, which made Baki a little discouraged. The previous omnipotence was just a coincidence after all. How about this? The idea of giving up was growing, which made Baki feel very uncomfortable. Although in his previous life, compromising with reality was a common experience for him, he had never experienced it in this life. Wait a little longer, let me think about it, he responded. The Chinese witch doctor admired his persistence and was helpless with his stubbornness. He sighed and said, okay, let's clean up here first, then have a good rest for a day and think about the rest tomorrow. After calming down, the two stepped into the basement and began to deal with the mess. Magic transformation, fire element preparation, starting position, prepare 3 cm in front of the palm, super standard shaping, full wide angle in front. 3 times the speed jet preparation, super energy ring, target flame core temperature rise 30%, delay 100% preparation quote asterisk to in a poetic and rhythmic tone. Recite the spell used to assist self-suggestion and confuse nature. This is a cross-ring spell formed by stacking rune components. Disadvantages such as long chanting time, high concentration during the preparation period, and very close distance standing and casting spells are destined to make it unusable for fighting. But the charm of magic does not lie in violence, and the small wins big of nature is the embodiment of its value. In this regard, the spell used at this moment is already excellent enough, as the two trolls use the super fire breathing technique with added ingredients. To heat up the basement, the scorching wind immediately submerged their figures from an unknown place and rushed out along the entrance. After a bath, Baki's mentality gradually adjusted. At this moment, the technique has taken shape, and the need for concentration during the maintenance period is relatively low. He only reserved a part of his energy to maintain the eruption of the flames, and spoke again. How is the rally plan going? I haven't paid much attention to it during this period. Is it going well? As his lips opened and closed, the high temperature hot air and steam that poured into his mouth seemed to become high temperature in quotation marks for the trolls. The mucous membrane touch is only a little warmer than the skin touch, and it does not bring any harm. It's a bit troublesome. It's not easy to find the traces of the saber-toothed beasts. Those guys are too alert. Ah, this is indeed a trouble. If the saber-toothed beasts are not found, the chief can't start storing food, right? Otherwise, it will stink by then. Why are you talking about this again? Can't you think of something else? The Chinese witch doctor complained. Well, it's not intentional. But doesn't this also show that food storage is a big problem that cannot be avoided? I always feel that this is a huge threshold for the advancement of civilization. Once it is bypassed, there will definitely be huge benefits beyond our imagination. That's why I say you have to be patient. You can't always expect to solve all problems in your generation, right? Yeah, right. It's incredible to be able to do what we have now. Look at the words we use, and the flames in our hands. You are already amazing. Yes, yes. What a stubborn guy. The perfunctory answer made the Chinese witch doctor snort angrily. During the conversation, the space gradually became dry, the rotten smell had almost dissipated, and the meat was basically carbonized. After stopping the spell, the Chinese witch doctor reached out to feel the texture of the soil and sniffed the smell. He felt that there was no problem, so he said, "Okay, tell the kids to move it out and throw it away." Baki nodded and stopped maintaining the spell. The two turned around and walked towards the exit. As they walked, the Chinese witch doctor looked at his palm thoughtfully. "What's wrong? What are you thinking about?" Baki, who was in a better mood, asked curiously. "You said, are we really controlling the so-called fire element? There are other spells as well, water element, wood element, etc. Well, why do you think so?" "Well, to be honest, I don't know. It's just my intuition. On the one hand, I think it's right. After all, fire and water did appear, and the existence of water and fire element seems to be natural, but at the same time, there is another voice telling me that fire element, and so on are nonsense." Baki heard the doubts of the Chinese witch doctor and fell into deep thought. This world is similar to the previous life in terms of physical properties. People like him who have lived two lives are actually more likely to fall into such confusion. Without waiting for an answer, the witch doctor continued to talk to himself. "Look at those pieces of meat just now. Do they look like burnt wood? They are black and layered. Why is that? Meat can't be made up of the wood element, right? Then can't we just eat wood normally? Haha, if wood is really edible, it would be quite convenient. It's not impossible to explain it. Suppose the wood element is not equal to plants. Suppose all complex structures including artrolls are composed of multiple elements. If so, then the similarities between the residues after burning can be explained, right? It sounds reasonable. However, if you put it that way, I think that compared to the existence of fire, water, wood and wind, the black stuff left over from burning seems to have more characteristics of the element from the perspective of forming a complex structure. Please collect, recommend, leave a message, and turn out your belly to attract book friends. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22 Smilodon Traces in the Current State of Enlightenment. The discussion on the element was not too in-depth. As soon as they left the basement, a warrior came over. "Witch doctor, the saber-toothed beast has been found." The old witch doctor asked the team I'm in charge to escort you there. "Oh, it's Cold Fang. Wait a minute, I'll go get ready." The middle witch doctor greeted the warrior and turned back to ask Baki, "Do you want to go with me? I remember you haven't really left the tribe, right?" Baki was a little hesitant. As the middle witch doctor said, he really hadn't left the tribe. But after thinking it over, he decided not to create any more complications. After all, there would be plenty of opportunities in the future. "No, let's find another opportunity later. Be careful." "Okay, I'll go first. By the way, don't bother with preserving meat anymore. Have a good rest for a day. There's still plenty of time." Got it, got it." Looking at the perfunctory answer, the middle witch doctor laughed and cursed, turned around and left. But before he could take a few steps, back his voice sounded again. "Central witch doctor, don't be careless. I suspect that the elemental defense of the monsters is not low. Try to use material state spells to deal with it." Hearing this, the central witch doctor did not stop, but just waved his hand to indicate that he understood. Han Yap, who was waiting on the side, also nodded to Baki and said, "Then Baki witch doctor, I will go first. Well, you should also pay attention to safety." "Okay." After the two trolls walked away, Baki also walked towards his house, still thinking about storing food in his mind. In the end, he even thought about whether he could work with other witch doctors to exhaust their physical strength several times and make a large amount of ice cubes to store in the basement to simulate the environment of a refrigerator. However, the idea is beautiful, but the reality is cruel. Not to mention the time and energy cost spent by the witch doctors here, and not to consider the loss of ice cubes. How to make ice cubes alone is already a considerable obstacle. If we use a current rough classification method of magic beasts, most of the known magic beasts in the Black Forest are fire and wind. The rest are mostly earth and water. In addition, there are a very small number of physique, psychic and wood. Ice and gold only exist in fantasy and have not been found so far. The current spell system is based on the imitation of the operating mechanism of the magic core. Therefore, in the absence of ice magic core samples, the witch doctor has no means to make ice. And back his poor knowledge of physics in his previous life was not enough to support him to achieve his goal through compound casting methods such as wind plus water. Moreover, this so-called wind plus water equals ice is still a guess made by watching Naruto in the previous life, and there is no theoretical basis. It is still unclear whether it is true or not. At least, in the experiment conducted under the incomprehensible eyes of other witch doctors, he blew wind on the water for a long time, but did not get ice. Everything seemed to be in relative motion forever. While Blade was thinking hard about how to store food, the tribe was also developing. Little Trolley did not have his own name yet. Only when he grew to the sub-adult stage, followed the hunting team to learn, and succeeded in hunting independently for the first time, could he get his own exclusive title. On this day, at dawn, Little Trolley woke up with his friends who lived in a large bunk bed with the guards rough shouting. The resolution of establishing the Enlightenment meditation method has been passed for a long time. The old witch doctor's geometric meditation method has been successfully simplified and has become a daily homework for the little trolls. At dawn in the morning, the little trolls started their new day with concentrated meditation. First, imagine a point and let the point move in the mind, not on the eyelids. Next, the point must be transformed into a line, from the line to a surface, and then into a body, and then the simple body must be transformed into a complex body, which is undoubtedly a difficult process. Meditation in the mind is not as easy as our intuition thinks. The jumping and uncertain thinking mode of intelligent life makes this kind of meditation a test. Little Trolley is now facing a similar dilemma. The more he wants to focus on the so-called points and lines, the more the darkness on his eyelids and the flickering, sand-like light spots will make his mind shift involuntarily. No, I can't look at my eyelids. Ignore everything and imagine this darkness as a space that belongs only to me. The little troll thought so, and tried again to retract his chaotic thoughts, trying to move the initial point and fix its trajectory. What will we have for breakfast? I wonder what prey the uncles in the hunting team will hunt today. Uncle, I think that's how it's used. These new words seem to be created by the youngest witch doctor. Who is better, the witch doctor or the warrior? Oh, why did I start to think about it again? I always think that the warrior is more handsome. Concentrate, disperse, concentrate, disperse. In his self-tangle, that is no different from that of most of the little trolls. The meditation time of 1 lamp hour is over. Okay, you have half a lamp hour next. Hurry up and eat and go to the toilet. Come back to class after you're done. The one who spoke was an adult warrior standing in front of a group of little trolls of all ages. His name is Yea, and he is one of the first trolls to learn to read. After many discussions, the decision-making level made a temporary resolution stipulating that all literate warriors should take turns to teach the little trolls literacy and common sense, while the witch doctors took over the teaching of mathematics, physics and other parts. The elementary textbooks of each subject were compiled earlier and were scattered into the education of the little trolls. They include literacy, common sense, mathematics and physics. Among them, mathematics and physics were memorized by Baki, based on his only impression, and the knowledge points were scattered and unsystematic. In the mathematics part, there are positive and negative numbers, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, semicolons, and simple equations of 2 or 3 variables, which are almost the knowledge of the elementary school stage in the previous life. Baki still remembers this part very clearly. In addition, if it is simple geometry, similar to the volume formula of squares and cubes, or the elementary part of finding the length of the sides and angles of triangles, it is actually not a big problem. As for more complicated things, I don't know how many years have passed since he graduated from high school, and the formulas and theorems that are not used in life have long been thrown away in Java, and in college, He studied law, and the school did not offer them courses such as advanced mathematics. When writing, I tried to recall what I had learned in junior high school and high school. The result was terrible! Exclamation mark. I was so ashamed. However, I looked up the knowledge points online and found that I had not forgotten all the knowledge, but that I had forgotten the fact that I had learned it. As for the specific content, if there was a question outline or something like that, I could still remember some of it, but it was a little vague, and I had to remember it again. I breathed a sigh of relief and felt that I had escaped from the ranks of illiterate. Chapter 23 Classroom. The same goes for the physics part. As a student of law and liberal arts, he doesn't have much solid knowledge. His memory of the concepts is already quite vague. If no one lists a knowledge point outline to remind him what he learned in the past, he basically can't recall it in a systematic way. For many things, only when facing specific problems can he have the feeling of, oh, isn't this theorem? In his mind. There are also parts involving specific data. After all, it is knowledge across the world. Many conclusions that have been verified by experiments in previous lives are no longer appropriate here. Therefore, such as gravitational acceleration, speed of light, speed of sound, etc. He did not keep any of this kind of data, and only gave a rough theoretical guess for the relevant knowledge points. As for chemistry and microscopic physics, he didn't even touch them. The existence of magic makes molecular structure and atomic theory too uncertain. He is afraid that, if he takes it for granted, it will bury a big pit and kill innocent future generations. In short, everything is very imperfect, and each discipline is, to a large extent, in a hollow state. Recalling the novels he had read in his previous life, he felt ashamed compared to the protagonists who knew everything about astronomy and geography. Of course, the little trolls today cannot be exposed to all the above knowledge. Literacy, natural common sense, simple addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division are what they are learning now. Well, and all ages learn the same things. There is no way. There is a shortage of teachers. Otherwise, considering the complexity of the knowledge taught today, it is not ideal to let the witch doctor teach, but a huge waste. But there is no way. This is a compromise that cannot be made in the face of reality. However, these situations cannot deny that the little troll's carefree childhood is indeed shrinking. Yea stood on the simple podium, pointed at the huge clay tablet behind him with a branch and said, "This is our sun, which is a huge star above our heads, that is believed to give us warmth while shining. When writing, pay attention to it. First write vertically, then horizontally teacher. The little trolls have already attended several classes, and after experiencing several teaching sticks, they generally understand the concept of classroom order. Now, they have learned to raise your hand to speak." Yea looked at the little hand stretched straight not far below, and responded a little nervously, "What do you want to ask, teacher? What is a star? Why don't the stars in the sky fall down? Why do they shine? Why do they generate heat?" The crisp questions like a string of bullets made Yea's forehead bulge with blue veins. He thought, how the hell do I know? But this can't be directly used to hit the little trolls in the face. Blade Fang Witch Doctor said that the curiosity of the little trolls must not be discouraged during the lecture. But isn't this embarrassing for him, Yea? He was just someone who memorized the lesson plan. If he really understood these things, he would have become a witch doctor long ago. After racking his brains for a while, he barely recalled the relevant discussions of the witch doctors, so he gritted his teeth and reluctantly replied, "Star is a hypothesis proposed by the smartest witch doctor, Biania. He believes that the sun in the sky may be a huge ball of light, and the light and heat it emits is the source of energy for all life activities. Of course, this is just a hypothesis." After taking out the only dry goods, he saw that the little trolls below were still getting restless, as if there were new questions brewing. So, he quickly said, "The witch doctors also said, listening to the class with questions is a good way to learn. So, you can bring your questions to the physics class, so that you will learn better. Okay, now let's continue to write this sun character." Hearing this, although the little guys below were still a little unwilling, they finally suppressed the desire to ask questions, and began to learn characters with Yea. Seeing this, Yea breathed a sigh of relief, and began to teach the content he was responsible for. General knowledge class. Leo was in charge again. He turned into a ruthless machine to recite the lesson plan, forcing the so-called common sense knowledge that few trolls actually understood into the little troll's head. When you climb the tallest tree next to the tribe and look toward the horizon, you will find that the sun rises at a certain moment and sets at a certain moment. This cycle is day and night. Through the lantern hour method invented by the Baki shaman, we roughly discovered that day and night are of equal length. The time when the sun emerges from the horizon is called the start of the day by the shamans and is recorded as 0 hours, 0 o'clock or 24 hours, 24 o'clock at night in the lantern hour method. The time when the sun climbs to the center of our heads is called noon by the shamans and is recorded as 12 hours or 12 o'clock in the lantern hour method. After 12 lamp hours, the sun will completely set from the other side. This point is the end of the day and the start of night and is recorded as 24 hours, 24 o'clock or 0 hours, 0 o'clock at night in the lantern hour method. In other words, daylight will last for 24 lamp hours. Among them, 0 to 4 o'clock. These 4 hours are morning. You little trolls usually get up, eat breakfast, and do morning meditation at this time. And the warriors will go out hunting at this time. 4 to 10 o'clock. These 6 light hours are morning. Half of our class time every day is concentrated at this time. In addition, you little trolls will have lunch during this time. 10 to 14 o'clock is noon. All of us trolls, if conditions permit, generally have a lunch at this time. 14 o'clock to 20 o'clock is afternoon. The other half of your classes and lunch are scheduled during this time. 20 o'clock to 12 o'clock is night. The lucky hunting team will return at this time to miss the forest, which will become particularly dangerous in the dark, and the younger ones of you will play, eat, and sleep during this time, and the older children will help to process the prey. After 12 o'clock, it enters the night, and the night will also last for 24 light hours. The night is divided into 5 stages, namely the early night from 12 AM to 4 AM, the upper night from 4 AM to 10 PM, the midnight from 10 PM to 14 PM, the lower night from 14 PM to 20 PM, and the early morning from 20 PM to 24 AM. However, there is nothing like the sun at night to serve as a marker for us. So, without lights, we have no way of determining which night zone we are in. In addition, the Black Forest is extremely dangerous at night. Except for a few hunting teams composed of the most powerful warriors, most trolls will try to stay in the tribe at night. Chapter 24 Digestive System and Rewards and Punishments. After the morning classes, it was noon, and it was time for the little trolls to eat again. The food was very traditional raw meat and fruits, all fresh from the previous night. Why did they still choose raw meat when they already had cooked food such as barbecue and boiled meat? This was due to risk considerations. The witch doctors, including Baki, were not sure what meat had lost in the process of turning raw food into cooked food. What if some element necessary for the growth of the little trolls could only be obtained through raw meat? Therefore, even though Baki's experience in his previous life told him countless reasons why cooked food was better than raw food, he still didn't dare to make this attempt easily. Who knows if this inexplicable world will play a big joke on him. Therefore, including the recipes of the big trolls, the dietary structure in the tribe is still mainly raw food, and boiled meat and barbecue are more like the concept of snacks in the previous life. In addition, when it comes to diet, it must be emphasized that only the little trolls in the growth period need to eat 5 meals a day. For adult warriors, eating 1 meal a day is enough. As for the reasons, there may be 2 aspects. First, the growing trolls have to grow from less than 1 meter in height to nearly 3 meters. During this period, their weight is far from being doubled, which makes them need a lot of energy to sustain their bodies. Secondly, it is because the digestive system of the trolls is far less developed than that of their adult and strong elders. The big trolls spend nearly half of their daytime on the road, and the remaining half of the time, they also rely on their excellent athletic ability to capture prey. Logically speaking, their energy consumption is definitely not low. In fact, this is exactly the case, and the reason why they only need 1 meal a day to survive is precisely because of the unparalleled digestive system structure. The digestive system of the trolls is divided into the active area and the passive area. The passive area is very similar to the digestive system in Bak's previous life, so there is no need to elaborate. The active area is different. It is an area where the trolls can decide whether to enter food based on actual needs. After dissection, it can be found that the active area is first a dehydrated intestine. Here, most of the water in the food will be absorbed by the intestinal wall, and the abundant capillaries in the outer structure of the intestinal wall are responsible for transporting the water to other places for storage. After that, the food with only a little water will enter the pipeline named grinding intestine by which doctors under the push of the intestinal muscles. The hard granular layer on the inner wall of the grinding intestine will crush every piece of food that passes through. When the food is ground into slag, it will be squeezed into the compressed stomach, and under the repeated peristalsis of the muscles in the chamber, the gas will be exhausted, squeezed, and condensed, and finally stored in a volume of only 10% of the same weight of meat. Only when the trolls feel hungry, and it is not convenient to eat, the compressed stomach will spit out part of the reserve into the softening stomach, and the food will be softened by water at this stage, and finally sent to the passive digestive system, to be transformed into nutrients. In addition, although the energy storage structure of cells has not been explored clearly, it can be inferred from the ability of regeneration of broken limbs that it should also be considerable. The combination of these two functions greatly facilitates hunting activities, allowing trolls to ensure their own nutritional needs by eating less frequently and in large quantities. Therefore, although the big trolls seem to eat only once a day, the key to the problem is how much they can eat this time. Let's get back to the point. Time soon came to the afternoon. The little trolls who didn't know what a lunch break was and who had been playing crazy all afternoon returned to the classroom again. This time, they will have mathematics and physics education in turn. The old witch doctor is in charge of teaching mathematics today. His expression is much more relaxed than that of Yam in the morning. Dong, dong, the sound of two crutches hitting the podium attracted the attention of most students. The old witch doctor leaned on his crutches and instructed in a leisurely tone. The last math class is about the intuitive understanding of simple geometry, right? The big witch doctor said that he left you homework. Do you have any homework you haven't done? Taking the initiative to admit mistakes is also a kind of courage. After asking, two stubborn little trolls really raised their hands. You are worthy of praise for actively admitting your mistakes. After class, go to Yap and ask for 2 pieces of barbecue. After saying that, before the little guy could be happy, the old witch doctor said again, rewards are rewards, but not completing your own tasks is also a big mistake, and you cannot avoid punishment. Come up. The joy on the faces of the 2 little trolls froze immediately. Under the gaze of the old troll, they had to go up in shame, take off their fur skirts, and lie on the podium with their buttocks exposed. The old witch doctor picked up the teaching stick that was as wide as his palm and as long as his forearm and beat each troll 20 times. The little trolls screamed and screamed. For their bodies that had not yet hardened, 20 times was not a serious lesson that did not hurt their bones, but was deep enough. When the little troll who had been taught a lesson walked down the stage, wiping his tears and holding his butt, the old witch doctor instructed again. Next, check the homework. Prepare the clay tablets. According to the 5-person groups we were divided into in the first class, the adjacent groups will exchange clay tablets and have the group leaders check them. Another moment passed, and the old witch doctor observed the faces of the little guys below and asked slowly, well, how are the results of the inspection? Are there any little guys who are smart and think they can hide it? Raise your hands if you have found any. No one raised their hands for a long time, but the old witch doctor didn't believe that there was really no problem. There were several of the most naughty little guys. He had paid special attention to them before, and the stone tablets were clearly empty. However, in the simple atmosphere of the tribe, hating informers is a widespread value orientation. This value cannot be said to be wrong, at least the old witch doctor appreciates it. But everything must have a degree, and the boundary between sheltering and keeping secrets must be made clear to these little guys. You must remember that knowledge is power. If you die in the mouth of monster due to lack of power in the future, will it be the fault of the team leader who is covering up for them now? In addition, Perhaps you cannot understand it now, but rewards and punishments, right and wrong, are the cornerstones of the development of the tribe. Every process of fair rewards and punishments will be the step forward of the tribe. Therefore, the team leaders who found the problem should not have the burden of snitching. You are right. After the voice fell, the team leaders below looked at each other, and several of them slowly raised their hands. Among them, some team leaders really understood. Some team leaders were just used to obeying the witch doctor's orders. Well, come up. Little guys who want to get away with it. Several little trolls who were found walked up to the podium hesitantly. If you don't do it, you should be punished. If you try to conceal it, you should be punished. In the future, you must know shame. After rewarding each of them with 40 teaching sticks, the witch doctor said so amid the crying of the little trolls. Chapter 25 Physics Class and Exploration of Refrigerator Principles. The content of the math class is not profound, especially at this stage. It is still within the scope of recognition, such as the recognition of numbers, the recognition of simple geometric figures, etc. In addition, they are taught addition and subtraction within 20 by combining the increase and decrease of fingers. The physics class that follows is relatively complicated. Unlike the other courses, physics is only the first class, and it will be taught by Baki himself for the time being. I heard it was Baki the witch doctor, the youngest one. The one who created the characters? Yes, and the math we learned before, it seems that he researched it. He is the sinner who destroyed our childhood. Come on, if there was no Baki the witch doctor, you don't even know what destruction and childhood are now. Haha, that's what I said. The little guys who entered the classroom again waited in the noise brought by each other's communication. Not long after, Baki arrived. After placing the teaching aids made of large and small clay slabs in his hand beside the podium, he didn't say anything more, and went straight into the class. I'm sure you all know the words physics and physics. After all, I've already told your literacy teacher. So in this first class, let's just talk about what physics is about. He took the huge clay tablet he had prepared and placed it on a wooden stand. On the clay tablet, there were large words engraved on it, how matter revolves. In order to make it clear for all the trolls to see, the hand gestures were carefully painted with charcoal. How does matter revolve? This question may seem a bit broad, but it is a good starting point. First, we need to study the meaning of each word. What is matter? Let's make an assumption that all matter is made up of smaller elements. If we master the arrangement of each element in space, is it equivalent to mastering the matter? Therefore, matter can be extended to the position of element in space. Here we use X to represent it. After saying that, Baki bent down, took a square clay tablet engraved with X, twisted the wood fiber tied to it into a thread, and hung it on the short vertical pole reserved on the bracket. Let's look at evolution. We often say how it was yesterday, how it is today, and how it will be the day after tomorrow. This is a kind of evolution, which talks about a relationship of change over time. In essence, this is a time-dependent relationship, which we record as f, t, to express the dependence of the change f on the time t. Well, this is a function, which you will come into contact with in the future. Now, you just need to know that there is such a thing. Let's get back to the question itself. That is, material evolution can be expressed as x, t. Next, let's see what how is. He walked around the podium and stood in front of the little trolls and said, "Now, I'm here." After that, he slowly walked to the middle of the classroom and said again, "At this moment, I'm standing here again." There are about 20 meters in between, and I counted about 5 seconds in my mind during this period. That is to say, I walked 20 meters in 5 seconds. So, can we know where I was in the second second? If I keep walking, where will I be after 30 seconds? Well, actually, we can know that. If I keep my speed constant, I will walk 8 meters in the second and 120 meters in the 30th second. How do I know this? Why can we calculate the position 3 seconds ago, and even know the position 30 seconds later, when we know the starting point, time spent, and distance traveled? Back to the question of how does matter evolve. In fact, the thinking we just had is one of the manifestations of how. It is asking how this x, t, comes from and where this x should change to at different times. And the change of x at different times can be extended to movement. In other words, this question is asking how does movement occur, what is its basis, and how do we know where it should go next moment. After all, Baki is not a teacher, and it is still difficult for him to grasp the difficulty and accuracy of the content. At this moment, he can only repeat the knowledge in his mind in a way that he finds easy to understand as much as possible. Anyway, after the get out of class, it was hard to say how effective it was. Some of the kids looked blankly, as if they didn't understand anything, while others seemed to be thinking about something. Old witch doctor, what do you think? After class, Baki met the old witch doctor who had been listening in the corner, and asked, I'm very inspired, especially the part about mastering the arrangement of element in space. I feel like our current use of magic can also be interpreted in this way. Well, I have similar ideas, but as I told you before, our means of observing the microscopic world are too scarce, so we can only classify it as a conjecture for the time being. Well, it's a good thing to be cautious. However, I see that the children don't understand much. Is the content too in-depth? There's no way. After all, the age span is too large, and it's normal to have different comprehension abilities. However, we don't ask them to all understand. Anyway, our ship is small and easy to turn around. We'll follow this pace for a while, and then organize an exam. We'll decide whether to divert them, or simply reduce the difficulty, based on the situation. Well, we can pick out a group of good students and train them first. Okay, I plan to formally teach them from uniform linear motion in the next class. Okay, you can take charge of it, but you can't relax in your own research. Come to us 3 old guys, whenever you need anything. Okay. After a brief exchange, the 2 trolls left. Back at the laboratory, Baki began his research again. Because all the previous simple storage methods had failed. This time, he planned to take out something that had been subconsciously rejected earlier due to the lack of energy, metals and other conditions. Let's first sort out the working principle of the refrigerator in the previous life. There is no electricity, no metal mines, and no processing methods. Although it may not be of much use to sort it out, I hope it can at least expand my thinking. Thinking like this, he began to try to recall the structure of the refrigerator in his home when he was a child. It seems that the back of the old-fashioned refrigerator has a metal fence that emits heat. Combined with the low temperature environment inside the refrigerator, it seems that the working principle can be easily summarized. The internal heat is transferred to the fence through some means to dissipate. Is that right? Is it called heat exchange? Or is there another name? Well, the name is not important. Let's think about the means of transferring heat first. How about heat dissipation? If it is a human body, part of the heat dissipation should be done through the evaporation of sweat. Translated to the refrigerator, the refrigeration zone absorbs heat and the heat dissipation zone dissipates heat. The evaporation of water can take away the heat of the human body, so the evaporation step should occur in the refrigeration zone, not the heat dissipation zone that we subconsciously associate with. From this, it can be deduced that the liquid that flows into the refrigeration zone should be low temperature liquid to facilitate the removal of heat. Liquid evaporation absorbs heat. Is there such a phenomenon? So, it is not necessarily to take away heat. Maybe the conversion process itself consumes heat. For the time being, just know that this is the result. But how to evaporate at low temperature? Let me think. Is there any principle? On the plateau, the boiling point of water will be lower. It seems that the key lies in low pressure. That is to say, the liquid that flows into the refrigeration zone may be low temperature and low pressure liquid. By evaporating it in the refrigeration zone, the heat is taken away or consumed. Then what flows out of the refrigeration zone is low pressure steam. What about the temperature? The refrigeration zone is not a furnace. Whether it is taking away heat or consuming heat, intuitively, I don't think the temperature will rise too much at this time, right? Then where does the heat dissipated by the radiator come from? First, assume that the heat of the radiator has nothing to do with the temperature taken out of the refrigeration zone. Based on this premise, see where the low pressure steam flowing out should go to make sense. First of all, the refrigerator does not have an external liquid inlet, which means that the liquid inside, remember it should be called refrigerant, right? It means that the refrigerant inside is recycled. In other words, the low temperature and low pressure liquid flowing into the refrigeration zone and the low pressure gas flowing out of there are from the same source. Then in the middle, it must go through one or more processes before it can be reused. Let me think about it. Gas to liquid. Pressurization? Compressed steam? If so, liquid to gas will absorb heat, then gas to liquid will release heat in the opposite way. Low temperature and low pressure steam will be compressed into high temperature and high pressure liquid. So, what the radiator dissipates is actually the heat released when the refrigerant vapor is compressed into liquid. Well, that makes more sense. The place where vapor compression is performed is called the compression zone. To put it in context, compression zone becomes high temperature and high pressure liquid. Heat dissipation zone becomes low temperature and low pressure liquid. Refrigeration zone becomes low temperature and low pressure gas. Compression zone, and so on. No, the span from high temperature and high pressure liquid to low temperature and low pressure liquid is too large, and the heat dissipation zone should not have this ability. So, there should be another step in between. This step should play a role in cooling and reducing pressure. When the pressure drops, the boiling point of the liquid decreases. When the boiling point drops, it is easy to evaporate. Evaporation consumes heat, which naturally reduces the temperature. So, low air pressure equals easy evaporation equals cooling. So does it only need to consider how to reduce the pressure? Reducing pressure. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.